as soon as I can. There we go. It's taking a minute. For some reason, YouTube has a delay when I do this, and I don't really know why. So that should get everybody going in theory. So I'm going to go ahead and mute that so I can get the chats out. That way I can talk with everybody. And good evening, everybody. Welcome for another episode of RetroRoots. Just finishing getting everything kind of laid out here. And now that we got everybody going live, there we go. It's taking a minute. For some reason, YouTube has a delay.
I think I see you live on YouTube
really
as well.
Why? Yep, we're live there because I just heard the audio kick in. So everything appears to be going clean right now, as far as I can tell. Close that out. So
let me get all the chat rooms.
Yes. So we have L's in here tonight. Hi, L. Cyber Mario's in on the Rumble side. Zombie popped in tonight. I think he might still be out there lurking. Dreadpool's in on both sides, or was, and Scrambles has popped in tonight. So we're starting to get people kind of popping in to hang out and kind of check everything out tonight.
Dred's taking a shot to see if the mobile app's going to start working for him.
Really? Okay.
So, yeah. So it started.
Historian banned Mario.
I know it's I know. For whatever reason, the Rumble, at least the app on Android, started working for me completely.
I don't use the app 98% of the time. I kind of stopped going to Rumble while I was at work because it just, I don't know, it was just becoming too much to try to keep track of, and while I'm trying to keep track of work, and since I'll tend to tune into things when I'm sitting at home, like on my days that I work from home, but during the majority of the week, I don't really pop in for the first 3 days or so. So I try to make it forward a little bit later. I was using the app quite a bit. Initially, it just became a bit more of a distraction. There were other things I felt like I needed to get done, so I just kind of stopped using it.
Here, I can understand that. So it's getting harder and harder for me during the day, and I feel bad because a lot of the people that I really like to watch are on during the day.
No, there's a lot of good people that stream during the day. Absolutely.
And it's
Big Block's in here. Television Gamer popped in. Thanks for popping in, guys. Cetra saying the Android Rumble app is way better than a couple of months ago. Yeah, they're steadily making improvements on a lot of these things on the Rumble side. The YouTube side's solid, but they've had like years and years and years and years and years.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's gotten into a good solid state. So there's generally never ever really a problem there.
Yeah. Well, so, now I can actually click on a notification that somebody's streaming, and when I go into that stream through the notification, I could actually chat. I couldn't do that a month ago.
You couldn't chat on the mobile application?
Go in using the if you go in using the notification, for whatever reason, it wouldn't show you the chat. It was the most bizarre thing.
Every time I would go into stream, it wouldn't necessarily show me the chat, but there was something I could tap on inside there to actually see the chat and then start engaging. It took me a little while to find it, but it was there. So
started working. So I can't complain.
Yeah. So what we have for you guys tonight, kind of explain the concept of what we're going to talk about before we go around and see what everybody's been kind of doing since the time that we last met together. Pardon me. Is the idea tonight is talking kind of about console generations, but not in the way that you might think of it, just going over the various different generations, because there's been a lot of talk in the industry of almost not having console generations anymore. Everything's kind of become so unified, and most things are kind of, at least Microsoft is making motions that they're still going to have a physical console, but their aim is to make themselves almost a online platform for you to go to and play games. They still want to have a console presence.
An ecosystem.
But they want to be more of an ecosystem. They want to be a little bit more like Steam, but as a service, right? And PlayStation has a similar offering with their PlayStation Plus, right? Where you can go back and you can play their older games. So kind of what I want to talk about is this kind of starts to lead towards what a lot of people might see, myself included to an extent, as sort of the end of a console generation era, where you're just kind of playing on whatever platform you happen to like, be that PlayStation, be that Xbox, be that PC, and your experience is pretty much the same. And what we lose as a result of that kind of stuff happening. So, what I thought we would do with the direction of this particular conversation is to kind of go through kind of some of the greatest hits, which is kind of why I put as many Nintendo consoles on the thumbnail as I did. And the reason I did that was intentional. And that's because, at least in the console generations, Nintendo has always been real big about pushing innovations and approaches in gaming and hardware, right? That's always been one of their big things, or at least it was for a very long time. So that's kind of the direction this is kind of taking. And you'll notice the Genesis is on there too, and there'll be a couple other things mentioned from Sega and other platforms as well. But those were just some of the ones that I threw up real quick to kind of get them on the board as ones that I think will probably hit tonight. But before we get too deep into this, I'm going to give you kind of a minute to kind of soak that up, kind of get an idea of, where you might want to direct your part of the conversation. Because as always, this is a very interactive show. This show exists to have these conversations and to have them directly with you, the audience. So, but before we get into that, Mike, what you been doing?
Oh man, playing all kinds of stuff now. Actually,
What's up, Batman?
on Friday,
Let's talk about best place for Sega
Lord.
Slander.
Lucky. Wait, maybe I am a mod on this channel. Remember
back, coming in.
Remember back. Plumbers are always on toilets. Speaking
Don't
of
hurt my
toilets,
Sega kid heart.
yeah, thank you, Cyber Mario. We got this. No, speaking of on the toilet. Friday, I got a chance with Peter to play Final Fantasy 14 online. See what all the hoopla was.
Dude, that game's really good. I'm sorry you guys had some
I'm being a
problems
little
with that.
facetious. So it's not, but the problems aren't specific to us. So here's my issue. My issue is it's been out on PlayStation and PC forever. So Phil Spencer got a deal to get it put out on Xbox, which is coming out on Xbox in the next, I don't know.
By the way, guys, follow
yes.
each other. Do all the things.
Do the things.
Do the things. I'm bad about asking people to do the things when I'm doing
Click
like a
the
stream.
buttons. Click all the buttons.
I'm terrible at that. I'm sorry. Continue.
Every one of the buttons.
You were going to be playing Final Fantasy 14. I know
14,
Aegis
right.
was talking to you about it. You and Pete were trying to get together to play it.
Well, it's the and this is what I've always railed against open betas, because to me they are just demos, and this is the consummate definition of that. The open beta that's out on Xbox now is simply the free trial. That's all it is. It's not fully open. It's not a beta. It's the free trial. And with the free trial, you can do some things. You can go play the game. You create a character, but you can't party up. So Peter and I built two different characters. You
can't even group with other free trial characters?
Nope. Negative.
That's
you
bizarre.
cannot.
Okay.
You cannot add them to your friends. You cannot party up with them. So basically, Peter and I ran around two different towns because we created two different. Our characters had two different jobs. So I ended up on one end of the map. He ended up on another, where we couldn't even see each other on the map, and we couldn't play together. So we basically ran around for like, I don't know, an hour and a half trying to figure out if maybe we just needed to do the first mission, because stuff like that, where sometimes you have to play single player for
Final
a few
Fantasy
minutes.
Doesn't typically do that for the most part.
No.
Once you go through the initial cutscenes,
It literally says you cannot party up with people in the free trial. So problem is, I can't buy the game because technically it's not out on Xbox yet. So we were basically stuck, not able to play with each other. So after about an hour, we gave up and played Fortnite.
See,
Now,
I've always had the version on PC since I've been playing it. And I played it mostly with a buddy of mine that I know from around here. I met him when I moved to Colorado. So we've been playing it for probably a couple years off and on here and there.
right.
And we've
But
had
you
a good
bought it.
time with it. So I figured out how to jump to different data servers so that I could go play with Aegis and a bunch of those guys on last Tuesday. So I'll probably do that again this Tuesday because it was quite a bit of
Oh
fun
yeah,
playing
so
with
then there
everybody.
was that. So
Yeah.
so Vapid and Aegis gave me the world information.
Yeah, and he got you into
But
the
you
Discord. I
can't-
saw that.
You can't enter. The world wasn't taking new characters.
His didn't show that it was locked. It showed that it had open slots when I looked at
It
it.
showed locked. It so what Galaxy Red came up with was the time we were playing it.
Yeah.
It was locked. Square, according to them, Square Enix locks it from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. or so, or 10 a.m. or something like that. And you can only put a new character in there between the hours of 10 and 7.
I don't recall
So-
that being a thing, but Galaxy knows that
didn't-
game pretty good, so I'd say he's probably
He does.
right.
He was a big help. He was a big help on Friday, but it was. And I'm on the Discord, it's either the Discord or the Guild, whichever one. I'm on the Discord.
Yeah. The Discord
and-
is the one that I jumped into for the Final Fantasy for like grouping up and stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
I saw
That's the
because
one
I saw
jumped
you
into.
in there, and when I and he pointed me at that piece of information, so it was.
That's
it was,
weird.
It was a completely frustrating night.
I've never
Yeah, here we
heard that,
go.
but then I don't remember when I made my particular character because I've got
Yeah, here
a
we
couple
go.
of characters built, but you only really need to have like one character in the game, and you can do everything.
And then
on
you
the
can
one
move
character.
around worlds, right?
Well,
we
and you
go.
can do
If you-
everything on the one character. You can do all the jobs, right?
Yeah, Fused.
So you can level
Fused
everything.
said, yeah, here it is. If you or a friend are making an account, please be aware the Seraph server often prevents creation of new characters. The time period appears to be approximately 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern when Square Enix implements the temporary block. It is recommended you create an account outside of those hours. There's nothing more deflating than downloading an MMO when you find out you can't be on the same server as your friends, or in the same town as your friend, or able to party up with your friend because you're on the free trial and you can't buy the game because the game's not out yet. So anyway,
Right.
all that, what my Friday was.
Okay.
And then on Sunday we played Skull and Bones, which actually is growing on us.
I saw some of that. I don't know how sold I am on that one, but when you talked about that before too.
It's
And
growing on
it
me.
seems to have gotten a big increase of people going back and playing Black Flag.
Because
I've seen
it's the
multiple
ship
articles
combat.
on that.
Because the ship combat is Black Flag. That's basically what it is. It's
Yeah,
the ship
yeah.
combat from Black Flag with a little bit of on land. kinda-
Scepter, I'm going to blame this on their Xbox port, not on the game itself, because Final Fantasy XIV has been around and massively successful for 10 plus years. It's only gotten more popular the more frustrated people have gotten with WoW. So a lot of people have moved over to it. It's got a really great, very responsive and eager to help out community. Everybody's usually super happy to have new people in there. They're more than happy to show people the ropes, etc. So there's generally not a lot of problems with that kind of atmosphere on the game. The problem is the free trial and the fact that they're just now bringing it to Xbox, because I think it was a PlayStation exclusive for a long time, PlayStation and PC.
And PC, yeah.
So you could always play it on PC, right? And it always functioned fine. And it really is the kind of game that I would prefer to play on PC with a mouse and keyboard, personally. Now, there are
It
people
is
who are
built for
playing in our
mouse and
group who are
keyboard.
playing it with a controller, and they were doing just fine. So it works that
the
way.
The interface is built for mouse.
Well, it's an
and keyboard.
MMO. Of course it's built that way. Even the only one that I found that was probably very suitable for a controller was DC Universe Online.
EverQuest Online Adventures on the PS2 as well.
I never messed with EverQuest. And the DC Universe I did mess with, and as soon as I jumped in, I go, wow, this feels like this should be played with a controller almost. because they
I
kind of
spent a-
designed it that way.
Yeah, I spent a
Intentionally.
ton. I spent a ton of hours on EverQuest Online.
Yeah. So, anyway, how did the rest of your weekend go? So, before we get into this fully.
Not bad, not bad. Spent Saturday evening with the family. Sunday was, like I said, we played Black Flag on Sunday, and then there's today. I mean, it's been a good weekend. How about you?
Yeah, not bad. Friday, I hung out with a friend for a while. We watched a bunch of anime and went out to eat. We did a little bit of Mortal Kombat. And then Saturday was just kind of a haze. I was just kind of in a haze all day. I don't know what happened then. But that's my normal day off from like working out or anything like that. I would have liked to have gotten more video work done then, but I mostly just kind of vegged out and played a little bit of Grounded, which I did some of that again on Sunday, but I also got some like... also got a bit of video editing done and got one of the videos done today that I need to get uploaded either today or tomorrow. So I'll probably be getting that done. So that'll be at least one video out this week. Kind of kept my eye on my YouTube channel because I uploaded the ColecoVision video on Friday, right? And so Friday was kind of normal. It was kind of what I expected. It got about 50 some odd views. And then all of a sudden the video just took off. It just went like all sorts of crazy bonkers on me, and I have no idea how or why. But everybody who popped in, thank you. Everybody who popped into here after you popped into that video, hi, thank you.
Yeah, and there's something about the ColecoVision that I think you and I completely underestimated, because remember last Monday I did a ColecoVision Monday Night Retro over on my channel, and like
yeah, you said you got like
growing.
700 views or something ridiculous like
and
that.
it's still growing. It is still getting views. It's amazing. People, and that's going to be a one that's going to get a second night, because I didn't even get to even some of the stuff that I wanted to do.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that people mentioned that they were a little annoyed with on the first video, so I'll probably do a follow-up video covering those two things. One guy came to was pretty upset that I didn't cover the Telestar arcade. That was the one that took the multiple different carts. And any more than I did, because I was kind of, at that point, I was so deep into the video, I'm like, at some point I have to talk about the console. So I admittedly kind of glossed over that a little bit. I'm like, all right, that's fair. And then somebody mentioned that there was two different ways of approaching the Atari 2600 on the ColecoVision that I also got wrong. One of which was that there's the Module 1, which was the attachment, which is what I actually threw the picture up on the video, so the picture was correct. But what wasn't correct is that I called it the Gemini. It was actually called Module 1. Gemini was a standalone version of the same thing that they sold that just basically was like a cloned Atari 2600 for reasons. Like, I don't know why they had them both, and I don't know why you would buy that over buying the Atari itself if you just wanted to play 2600 games. I thought they had just renamed Module 1 to Gemini because most of the time you have like the project name and then you have the marketing name, right? So I got that wrong. So I probably need to do something going a little bit more into those two and to kind of clarify that for people who came into it thinking, okay, well, he's got everything down pat. Well, that's not always the case.
Right.
And a couple of people busted my balls about it, and that's totally fine. I actually expect that, and I've always encouraged that on this channel. If I'm not right, or you think I'm not right, then say something. I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm going to go do my homework on it and see if you're right. And if you are, I'm going to be like, my bad. That's just how I work on these channels. That's just how they function. Console games just for the NES feel a bit too primitive. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things. All right, Batman, have a good night. So that's kind of how my weekend went. I just kind of going through that. And Cells popped into chat. What's going on, Cells? Oh,
yeah, we got
looks
Cells.
like
We got Cousin Born is here
tonight too.
Oh, size up in the. Yep, I got both. I do have both chats up, so I'm trying to look. Ellie's, Dread, Scrambles is up here.
Mm-hmm. We got a bunch of people popping in. So kind of how I'm thinking about approaching this is we'll kind of start going chronologically as far as like what I feel were kind of like the biggest hits and the things that kind of started moving the needle. Now, I'm not going to go back as far as the Odyssey and the Fairchild. Those aren't really. It's not to understate those. Odyssey was legitimately the first console ever on the market. Period. So it's
Right.
pretty much Genesis, not the console Genesis, but Genesis of video gaming. Um, Not counting the brown box, which was the prototype that got turned into the Odyssey. And then the Fairchild, who a lot of people don't know, but that was the first one that actually had cartridges. So you had Gary, I think it's Gary. No, was it Gary or Larry Lawson? I'm drawing a blank right now. I should remember this because I did a bunch of research on
Yes.
him at one point.
I
That
can't remember either.
helped come up with a foundation of the actual cartridge on it, which is where you could actually, instead of just plugging things in and reprogramming the unit hardware wise, you had a storage device on there that would allow you to store a ROM, and that would allow you to load up various different games and give you a lot more flexibility. But the first really big hit in the video game console era was the Atari. And that's because it came the closest at the time and was the most polished version of what was out there to start bringing the arcade market to the home. Right? You had Pong clones and things like that, but you didn't have anything that interchangeable cartridges. You didn't have things like Defender. You didn't have things like Galaga, and you didn't have Pac-Man. You didn't have Donkey Kong and all those coming to those types of units, unless you had the little LED ones by Coleco, right? But you did have Atari starting to bring these things to the market. So that's like the first big step. And these aren't like incremental steps where they're changing things. These are changes from the arcade to the home. So that gets us in the home, right? And Mike, jump in here anytime, man.
I am. No,
Okay.
I was answering Scepter's question about the Channel F. And by the way, it is Jerry with a J with a G.
Okay. Okay.
Gerald Jerry Lawson.
Yeah, so the Channel F did okay. I mean, it was pretty popular and it was doing pretty well, but shortly after it came out, after it officially got out, I want to say it was like a year or less, and then the 2600 dropped. But it was called the VCS at the time, right? It didn't get called the
Right.
2600 till the 5200 came out, and then they renamed the system. I don't disagree. Most Atari games are kind of difficult to play.
It depends on what they are.
I find them difficult to go back to just because of the antiquated arcade high score concept, and they're just the console itself is kind of rough around the edges. And since I don't have any nostalgia for that particular system, it doesn't pull me back into anything. You see what I'm saying? Because I don't have any grounding in it, really.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I will say it depends. Like I could play Pitfall and Pitfall 2 all day, right? If the 2600 was all I could play it on. Obviously I could play it on a number of different things.
Right.
But there are games that still hold up today as far as gameplay itself. I mean, there's stuff like Kaboom, there's Breakout, there's
I feel like Berserk
you know,
holds up pretty decent.
Berserk holds up very well. I think the 2600 version of Missile Command holds up well. Gravatar holds up well. So I mean, there are for every one of those, of course, there is a Pac-Man and stuff. But like even Miss Pac-Man on the 2600 was really really good for what it was supposed to do.
Yeah,
So
for what it was trying to be, Miss Pac-Man was definitely the one you wanted to play. Pac-Man
Yeah.
was obviously rushed. The original Pac-Man was painfully rushed on the Atari 2600.
Well, yes.
There were much better versions of that out there.
Well,
But
yes,
once
and
you
there was
move
a
from that,
whole-
you start getting into you can go ColecoVision, but ColecoVision bumped things graphically, right? Everything was kind of bumping things graphically in my mind. 26, 5200, 7600, or 70 or 2800 or
Well,
7800, wherever you're talking.
yeah.
Depending on where you're at, because they kind of changed their numbering system depending on where they launched it.
Well,
And
and
ColecoVision
smack
kind
in
of
the
fit into
middle of
that
that-
same thing, where it's
Well,
mostly
smack
a
in the-
high score challenge.
Yes. Well, because that was the consummate arcade machine. That was almost strictly arcade console, as we know. Every arcade game known to man came on it. In the middle of that,
Well, Well, they
in the
also had
middle of
really
that
small
wasn't-
development teams, Born. One thing you have to remember about that era is you've got 1 or 2 people making a game in 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
That's standard.
Fry-
That's kind of normal.
Todd Fry, right. Todd Fry made Pac-Man in 6 months.
Yeah, E.T. was done in like 3 by like one guy.
In 3, right, because they were trying to get it out to...
It needed to be out by Christmas.
It needed to be out by, right, because of the movie tie-in.
Yeah.
Like even because I did when I did my Donkey Kong video, he even only had no time at all to build, and 4 bits to build a cart with. So
Yeah.
even his, even that game, which was done by Coleco, did not have a lot of time. But a lot of them were, I mean, you could tell, you had games that were so basic that so I understand your premise that, a lot of it can't go back to. Like, I can't go back and play Chuck Norris Super Kicks. It's just, no. But
Well,
I mean,
there's a few of them that I'm not saying there's not any fun to be had, and a lot of those games are really intended for multiple people to be playing at the same time. And from that aspect, you'd have a lot more fun with it, right? But if you're playing solo,
yes,
or you're looking for a little bit more of what we're looking for towards modern video games, realistically, one of the biggest game changers of that era, I feel like, was probably the NES. Because it was the first time you had like defined stages and you had defined ends of games. You started to have things like cutscenes. The music started to get better and more involving and started pulling you more into the game's atmosphere a lot better. Because like Metroid, when you're listening to Metroid and you're in that world, even the old Metroid, as rough as that game is, does a very good job of putting in the atmosphere, not only with the music, but the sounds of the monsters and just the design of the game and the exploration in that game, making you feel like you're lost in an alien world. And you really can get sucked into that.
You can. And it's not to say that, I mean, Coleco did have a couple of games like that. They did have, because remember, they did have...
And Nick is just a ColecoVision fanboy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I am admittedly, ColecoVision was my
you know,
first console, but it wasn't my first real video game love. I still give that to the NES. And part of it was because of my age when I started, right?
That's
when
typically
I started,
what that is.
The ColecoVision was there. I played it. I enjoyed it, but it didn't stick in my mind the same way that the NES did. It didn't capture my imagination the same way.
That is absolutely
nice to meet you. I think this is the first time I've seen you in chat. Hello.
Classic. Yeah, welcome. Because I go back and because I go back that far, Gateway to Apshi, BC's Quest for Tires.
Oh, that's Karami. I'm sorry,
James
Karami.
Bond.
You changed your name again. I'm sorry. I should have caught that. Good gamer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Karami. That's on me.
Miner 2049er. There were Montezuma's Revenge. There were games on the ColecoVision that had endings, and then same thing with, like, I would say too, the same thing with Intellivision. You had games that had endings that didn't have, now cutscenes and things like that. That's different, but you had games that had endings and had plots and things like that. The NES was able to merge graphic capability with those stories to give you that presentation that you couldn't get elsewhere.
Yeah. I think my point with the NES isn't so much the endings on it, but most of them are actively trying to tell you a story, right? Like Ninja Gaiden always comes to mind when I think about this. It was one of the first games I saw that had actual cutscenes that progressed a storyline. Like you had Pac-Man that had like a couple little cutscenes, but it wasn't necessarily, and that was Miss Pac-Man, not the original Pac-Man. that kind of told you a little bit of a story, but it wasn't the
Right.
same as having the dialogue and the characters kind of like interacting in a more tangible way, right? Where it was trying to almost tell you a movie-like story. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And you're right. There were, you know, even Super Mario Brothers told a story. There was narrate there. It wasn't as narrative as Ninja Gaiden, but
No, but
You
it
know.
was attempting to tell you a story, and the world itself told you a story, and it had more capability to do that. And that had to
Yes.
do with the generations getting more advanced. But there was a couple things on here. Scepter was saying that Activision was top tier around that time, and absolutely. And they're
Oh,
one
absolutely
of the reasons
was.
the market is the way it
Benny!
is today because of the early kind of slogs with Atari, right? And how they left. And Bourne said if it wasn't for the crash, I think Coleco would have actually beat Atari, and if they'd had a better controller. And there was a more NES style controller for the ColecoVision, though I'm a little fuzzy on how that one worked. I know Luke's Awakening has one, and he swears by it. It's more in line with the NES controller. And it doesn't have the D-pad, and it doesn't have that joystick stock. Which, while I played with that as a kid, I can imagine that being very tough to go back to now.
Yeah, I don't think though that was. I don't think that wasn't out at the time. That's a collector vision.
What's up, Chris?
That's a collector vision item. That's not an official Coleco
Is it
item.
not an official thing? Okay.
It's not. Just
Yeah,
like
'cause
the arcade stick.
I had a lot of discussions with people in the chat on the ColecoVision because a lot of people are saying they were just going to get trounced anyway by the NES and what could they have done and stuff like that. And that's a theoretical discussion that we could either do a little bit of tonight or we could go into on another episode of like a what if kind of episode, or what if this happened or what if that happened. Because you can bring in things like Sega and stuff like that into that conversation too. Because if they'd made a couple of key choices, and TurboGrafx as well, their trajectory could have been vastly changed in a lot of the markets that they were in.
Yes. But I do agree, and I think we talked about this when we talked about the ColecoVision, was that if without the crash, it's possible Coleco would have at least stood up to a point where maybe Nintendo doesn't necessarily get the foothold they do.
I think
know.
they edge out Sega. I don't think they edge out Nintendo. Because I think Nintendo was going to come into the market, and they were going to come into the market hard. Regardless.
No, I agree that they were, but Coleco would have been ready for them because they had a system out. You know, Sega may not have gotten into that market. They would have. I think it's possible
Super
that
Mario told a
Sega
story
could have
about using
continued
mushrooms
to.
and hallucinating about being a hero who rescues a heart check from an angry turtle. Hey,
Yup.
what's wrong with that, sir? Sir?
Sai knows. You know, it's always something with Mario. It's always something. I'm telling you, his brother never wants to be seen with him. I'm just saying.
Hey, Luigi's got his own stuff going on.
Exactly. He doesn't need Mario. He's got his own mansion. Where does Mario live?
Exactly.
Mario lives in the sewers.
Exactly.
And Luigi's got his own mansion.
I mean, he's hanging out with Daisy. I mean, come on.
I know.
A
Hey,
little something going on there.
Little something going on. You know, he's
That's right.
thinner. He's more in shape. No, he doesn't just say the same thing over and over and over.
What's up,
It's
Andy?
me,
How you doing?
Mario. Hey, what's up, Andy?
Okay, L saying he only had the Famicom was a good console.
Thank you, Andy.
I don't like how the consoles are hardwired to the side like that and how short the cables are. But I've seen a bunch of really good stuff off the Famicom. I don't understand Japanese, so I have limited understanding of what's going on in some of those games. But I mean, you've got some games in there that are doing some like really neat stuff and some really fun concept stuff. The one thing I always say about the Famicom that I always kind of liked is since it's a Japanese console for a Japanese audience and it's not trying to be a multicultural kind of console, is they were able to do some stuff that's very Japanese. And as such, it's very unique and fun to see and interesting to see people play. And even if you don't understand what's going on, it just looks fun. You know what I mean? And the people that are playing it are having a good time. They're smiling. They're having a good time. I was watching Panda do a Famicom stream the other day, and he was having a blast checking a lot of this out. The only one he didn't like was Takashi's Challenge, which I have a video on that coming out this week. I got him to try that one, and he didn't get a translated version of it. So since that game is part action platformer and part like Secret of Monkey Island style dialogue kind of game, he had no idea what was going on. Which for me made it more entertaining. Is there even room for more hardware makers? I don't know. Right now, I feel like you've got 3 in there, and you've got 2 that feel the same, and you have one that's the outlier that's Nintendo. And Nintendo's going to do Nintendo. And Nintendo will almost always have an audience because they do Nintendo. Since they do Nintendo things, they're almost always going to have an audience. Because the people like us that grew up on it are generally going to pick one up for the most part and let the kids play it. And then the kids are going to get a feel for it because it's got very approachable games with very iconic characters. So it's very easy to start getting kids into gaming with a console. And whether or not they stick with that console or not, it's another story. A lot of people move away from it to other consoles. But right now, it stands out more to me in the current environment because it feels so different from Sony and Xbox, which have started to feel like, okay, which one do you like the hardware specs on the best? And which one has the right exclusives. And at some point, as part of our conversation that we're talking about, they don't seem like you're going to have maybe those exclusives as much anymore. So it's just going to become which one do you prefer the hardware on? Which one performs better? And in that case, it's kind of like a cheaper way of playing modern games than having a PC and dealing with the problems of a PC, right? So,
well, that's where I am, and this is where I see all this fighting going on social media right now about the direction of, Microsoft and Sony, and everybody's, well, just go get a PC. And not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants. My PC playing days are over, right? I don't
not
have
every Famicom game leaves people smiling. Hashtag Ninja Gig.
So I'm happy. I'm happy enough with console stuff, and to your point, Nintendo is always going to do what Nintendo does. They've got the thing is, though, they've got the games to make whatever they do work. And I think that's a big differentiator and allows them the flexibility to come back even after, a down. So, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of where Nintendo consoles were, NES, SNES, Nintendo 64, GameCube.
Purpose, why are you using Bing?
Wii U, and then Switch. So I mean, Nintendo's never going straight up, but it doesn't matter. They don't need to, because every time they launch a console, they've got enough games of their own that nobody else has to allow them a fresh start, right?
Yeah. And there's no reason the other consoles shouldn't have that. I'm going to be honest. Like, PlayStation's got enough IPs that if they were to start pulling those things out of mothballs, they'd be fine.
They both do,
right?
And none of them, and they don't.
And Xbox does. I feel like they've got fewer than PlayStation, like iconic characters and stuff to really bring forward to kind of push things. But they've got enough to keep them moving.
I was going to say, it's the reason they're not iconic is because they mothball them and don't let them go. And that's been a source of frustration for a while. They've got, they both got IP that people have been stammering for the better part of, 10 years now. I've been waiting for a new SOCOM game forever. People have been waiting for a new Conquer game forever.
What about a new Cameo game?
A new Cameo? A sequel to Cameo would be phenomenal.
Whatever happened to their Perfect Dark that they were talking about bringing back and stuff like that?
There's a lot of stuff like that. Well, the Perfect Dark game is still in development. They are Crystal Dynamics
it's kind of going the
but no,
forever route right now.
It really has. I've spoken about that many times. I'm in agreement with you. It's a sore subject for me.
Yeah,
but
part of this is how these things push things forward, right? So to kind of get us back on topic, NES kind of started driving that with the more story-driven content. The Master System's there, and they're doing some games like that, but they're still doing more arcade ports than they are kind of more original titles that are kind of driving story. Because that's where Sega's comfort zone always was.
That's where
Sega always innovated in the arcade. Nintendo always seemed to innovate in consoles, right? So you start hitting the next generation of consoles, and you see Sega add at least one button, but then you see Nintendo kind of flip everything on its head and have a 6-button controller. So they evolved the controller when they went to the next one. Not only did they improve things graphically and have a different way of graphically processing things that let you do more overhead, give yourself a little bit more dimension and things like that, but they also innovated with the controller design in that era. Then around that same, but the Genesis is not far behind on that because they started changing the age dynamic and started trying to bring the age group up and get more people involved in video games by bringing in things like sports games and more mature games and more mature like themes into video games. These weren't really a lot of things that the PC market needed to do because the PC market's using mouse and keyboard. They already kind of had some adult themes. There were a few sports games there, but where they really got the most popular was on console. I mean, you had Madden on the Apple II, right? You had it on like NES and stuff like that. And to an extent, you had Tecmo Bowl, but you didn't really have that genre kind of explode out the way you did until right around that 16-bit era, right? So you're seeing innovations that way with the market kind of pushing itself forward and trying to find a way to kind of outdo the other. So that's kind of another way in which they kind of started pushing the agenda and kind of pushing the market in ways that the PC market wasn't necessarily doing. The industry wasn't necessarily really trying to do it until somebody came up with an idea of why don't we do this and get people to start building these things and taking it more seriously, right? Okay, everybody's throwing out links and stuff. Oh, that's why he's clicking on the Bing link. Okay, you sent a link through Bing. Okay. Because you're one of those weird people that likes Bing.
Oh, for God's sake. Yes, because I get my Microsoft points, so I don't have to pay for Game Pass.
I still don't understand why you use Bing. It needs to do a double crossover.
I get
Gears
Microsoft
of War and a Halo
points
game and
to
Halo and a
pay
Gears of War
for
game. Make it
my
happen.
Game Pass. It pays for my Game Pass. That's why I use it. Otherwise, I would use DuckDuckGo. All right, I need a quick moment. I apologize, guys. I pulled my back on Sunday, and you guys see me stretching my left arm. It is. I am.
So Sumter's actually asking, do you actually get points? And I guess yes.
I get points. Yes, you get points for doing searches and other things in there, and then you can use those points to get gift cards and all kinds of stuff. Brother Eli, Eli's in the house. Eli. Yeah, I need 2 minutes to run upstairs and take some Advil because my left side is killing me. I'll be right back.
All right, chat. While he's not here, we can talk bad about him. So yeah, I am keeping track of the comments, but yeah, a lot of this is evolutionary until we start getting into later consoles, and then it seems like Nintendo's really starting to kind of not only push mobile markets as far as handheld gaming goes, but they're trying to push various different innovations in how you interface with video games. And we'll get into that and how a lot of the controllers and the architectural designs, I feel like, kind of really push things and make a case for really why we need people taking more risks in the gaming market than they really have been. That's kind of the idea. There we go. See, size with me. A Rumblebot is broken? Okay. I didn't know the Rumblebot was broken again. I thought they had that mostly streamlined. Didn't they get... They've got a new revision of that every so often that I think actually kind of smooths things over. Mike kind of leaving me hanging when we only got like 2 people here. I see how it is, Mike. He can't hear me right now. It's fine. It's totally fine. Whatever, Mike. That would be my wife finally getting home. Yeah, I'm actually really kind of curious to see if Nintendo tries to change the script again, or if they kind of play it safe with the next Switch.
Smells like wet socks and old milk.
So I was just like, I bet you just went to bed.
Dude,
You also said you smell like wet socks and old milk.
Yeah. Guys, don't get old. Getting old
really
sucks.
does suck. It really does suck. Insult his mother was gone. Damn.
Oh my God. No, just start talking bad about Coleco. Thanks, Dad. So,
So there's a couple of jumping off points here. I'm trying to think of where we want to go next with this, because I guess the next logical place to go past 16-bit would be probably the N64 and the analog stick. That's the next place my brain goes.
I would head 32-bit for 2 reasons. Number one, both
Where in the
32-bits.
32-bit do you want to jump? Because the 32X doesn't really do much.
No, but the Saturn and PlayStation do. The Saturn and PlayStation really were where CDs began to truly take off.
Yeah, but the
Like, you had the
N64
Turbo
came in
Season.
before those launched, or right around the same time with the analog stick being a predominant feature and pushing things more in the direction of 3-dimensional gaming.
That is correct. However,
That's kind of why I jumped to it chronologically.
Well, let's see. The Nintendo 64 was 1996 in Japan, 1997.
PS1 was 1995, and the N64 was 1996. Saturn, I thought, was 96 or 97.
95.
Was it 95?
Yep.
Okay. The PS1 didn't have an analog stick on it, though, till Nintendo did it.
It did not, but the Saturn did. Now, I don't know if the
Saturn one didn't come out till after the N64 controller existed. We've had that discussion before, and I remember that. It did come out with Night into Dreams, but I don't think Nights into Dreams came out till after the N64 existed.
I am looking at when that controller came out. That controller came out in 1995.
That controller came out in 1995?
Sorry, 1996. No, it came out in 1996.
Okay.
Around the same time the N64 was coming out.
Okay. So the N64 likely dropped before that controller hit anywhere near anybody. Or right around the same time.
Right around the same time. So
I'm still going to give that to the N64, though, because it started out with the focus being around that.
Well, yeah, that was the packed-in controller. I will give you that. The other thing that the Saturn did that no one else was doing at the time was any form of online gaming with NetLink. It was a modem, but you could do it.
Okay, I disagree with that because the Genesis already done that with the...
The Genesis the Genesis did it with the Sega Channel, but this was...
And the Super Famicom did it.
But this was this console that you had a modem where you could play with your friends.
Okay. Because where I kind of give like the most credit to changing that part of the game is Xbox. I mean, you had modems and stuff like that where people could
wow.
play online, but the game really changed on that when you started getting to the Xbox.
I think the Dreamcast was more where that
That was still 56K and it was still clunky as shit. Xbox is where it got
not.
more streamlined because people with
That,
mainline cable could do a lot more, and you had the
but
online store
so
with the
hold
arcade.
hold on. Well, wait a second though, because the Dreamcast had because I have one. It had a broadband adapter. You could buy a broadband adapter, and you could play on SegaNet with the broadband adapter. And every
Didn't
game
come
was
with
compatible
it built in,
with it.
though. I'm kind of trying to stick with
No,
things
but
as they were built in, not as they got reworked.
Okay, so then the Dreamcast came with a 56K modem built into it.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that it didn't have online capability.
But SegaNet gave way to
I mean, if you want to get
Xbox
technical,
Live.
the Intellivision was going online before like any of this shit was going online.
Well, yes,
you
it
could
was,
buy
but it wasn't.
the Playcade thing that you could plug into your Intellivision.
Yes, you could. But if we're talking about, so I mean, granted, the Saturn, the NetLink was an add-on cartridge, but the Dreamcast had a modem built into it.
I don't think there was a cross-platform online service between the two. They both had online services.
Yeah, not here anyway. Yeah, see,
like the Famicom had its own thing going on with the Satellaview.
See, Zombies
SegaNet, I think is what it was called, was the one for the Genesis that had the cartridge that would plug into your cable modem. So technically that connected into like an actual cable modem before the Dreamcast even happened. But a lot of the infrastructure that we look at today didn't really take off until right around the Xbox. I would argue.
Well, no, because the Xbox didn't. I mean, remember, Xbox Live didn't launch for 2 years into the Xbox's life. It came with the. Whereas Sega had SegaNet.
I think the reason to say it with the Xbox is it already had the LAN connection built into the console, and it also had a hard drive built in.
Yes,
that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. That was a huge deal. That was a game changer for saving, for a number of different things. I mentioned
Satellaview. There's been a couple of attempts at this, but none of them lasted more than like a year and a half. Most of them didn't last very long. Xbox's online service is one of the first ones that really stuck. Because you got to remember, when the Dreamcast launched, yes, it had a 56K modem, but its online service didn't launch until like the next year. SegaNet wasn't live initially.
No, because I beta tested live.
Yeah, it wasn't, and I'm gonna win because I can mute him.
No. See, that's how he wins. He censors. That's right. Fascism.
That's right. I censor. Yes, and SegaNet would let you download to the cartridge's memory, but you couldn't keep it long term.
Correct. Well, the Sega Channel is what it was. And see, Zombies where I'm at. There were the experiences of Phantasy Star Online, which was an MMO. Those experiences came on.
Get down here.
So for me, with the Saturn, for example.
I had to get down on that before I came back out to the rest of the chat.
Yeah, I can't Kenneth is such a great guy. He's gonna be on with us tomorrow night.
Is he great?
He is. I am looking very forward to having Kenneth.
I never went online with my Dreamcast because my internet connectivity was bad anyway, and I didn't have a second phone line for the longest time. So even trying to use a 56K modem online was dicey at best. The reason so I didn't do a lot of online gaming through the Dreamcast. I knew it was there, and I knew it was an option, but I also knew it was a late offering for the Dreamcast. Because I want to say a couple months after it actually came out, they started running into the remainder of their problems started cropping up, and then they were starting to make an exit.
They were, but SegaNet was alive and kicking with games like Revolt and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Look,
some of the
reason
sports
that I bring
games
up
were
the
played
the
online
reason that I
along with Fantasy Star Online is held up as like
the
the blue
reason
ribbon of what they did with that service.
the reason that I bring up the Saturn as an online, as really one of the first kind of true. It's Zombie saying
And
the
Indy,
same
I
thing.
actually mentioned that as well.
Yeah, he did.
I mentioned. Well,
Um,
I think I called it a Playcade, but yeah, their
Right.
cable extension came out in like
Right.
1980.
When Comcast was just becoming a thing with your boxes and the
Yeah,
things on the top of your TV, but Zombie
Atari came with two cans
will
and a string.
Zombie will attest to the fact that there was nothing like playing Duke Nukem on with your buddy on a Saturn with the Netlink, right? 2-player Duke Nukem, 2-player Sega Rally, because you were yes, it was 56K, but you were direct connecting to a friend's Netlink, so it was a direct connection. You weren't going up to servers. Everybody wasn't dialing into CompuServe and then trying to do it from there. It was a solid.
I don't know if I
experience.
consider that an upside because I've done those direct connections over 56K modems before, and they sucked.
I've had
Really,
such
I
a
had
great
terrible
time.
times with it. A lot of times, like it would just be glitchy, rubber bandy, like people warping all over the place. I had some pretty bad problems with them in the past, and that was even on PC.
So there was. You also have to remember that's analog, and like anything else, you had to deal with how far you were from the telephone company, how strong your 56K line was,
Right.
yada yada yada. So there were some things that played into that don't play in now, other than ping times. So I do it's not that I don't understand what you're saying. There are probably places in the United States where 56K was more like 5K, but it worked really well. Ah, there we go. Porpoise. I'm trying.
Oh wow!
Thanks,
Okay,
dude.
I didn't expect the $10 donation. Thanks,
Dude,
Porpoise.
Porpoise is the man.
I didn't even recognize that when it popped up. That's how few of those I see.
Porpoise is the man. Porpoise, you weren't on that Coleco stream. Was it the Coleco
What's up,
stream?
Matthews? No, I didn't. I don't think I was on the Coleco stream. I forget what was
No, you
going
were
on that
not.
night.
Oh yeah, you missed Porpoise dropping $50 on me to take my shirt off on stream.
Except it's like, let's just forget all about 56K. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Those I'm
So-
kind of glad those days of my life
Yeah.
are over, and
No, I
mine
am
extended
too.
much
Look,
longer than a lot of people's.
But it did revolutionize the industry. Hey, what's up, Matthews?
It
Brother Rob's
did,
in the
but
house.
a lot of these early services and stuff, I'm kind of looking at it from. My argument is more from the infrastructure side that got kind of thrown behind it, right? So while Xbox didn't
but
have it,
SegaNet-
it didn't have it going live at launch, they did start having servers where people could join in that drastically reduced the delay that a lot of people had because they're connecting to the same server. So you weren't having to do this peer-to-peer stuff as much anymore. They started setting up a
No.
more active store that sold specific titles that were only available through the online stores and things like that, and started kind of
Yep.
changing things that way. But I mean, we kind of jumped past like the N64 really fast with the analog stick and the push into 3D. I mean, you had several consoles that were starting to do 3D, but it wasn't their main focus. Like, as much as you can say the Saturn had an analog controller, its focus was almost as much on 2D, or if not more, than it was on 3D, primarily because they were trying to get their next line of arcade stuff closer to arcade quality on their console. So they wanted that strong two-dimensional architecture. And PlayStation 1 was better at doing 2D than it was at doing 3D. It could do both. And it did both pretty well, but if you go back and you look at those, that whole era is kind of rough, right? it's hard to go back to some of those games and play them because they all kind of look rough. I feel like some of the some of the N64 stuff holds up pretty well. Like I feel like Star Fox holds up pretty well. Mario 64's control scheme is rough to go back to, and the graphics is rough, but it's a very if you look at it as like a beginning, it's really good from that standpoint.
But if we're gonna give 3D gaming kind of the nod as to a revolution, it's got to go to PlayStation. I mean, the PlayStation was built with 3D in mind. They were building that system for games like Ridge Racer, for games like Battle Arena Toshinden, for games that were
See, I'd argue Nintendo's was built only for 3D architecture in mind because he went straight to Silicon Valley and made it couldn't do 2D for crap. Graphics. It was completely designed around polygonal graphics. Whereas a lot of what early PlayStation was doing wasn't that much different than Doom. They were using textures and perspective in a lot of cases. Now, they did have some Polygon 3D. They did have some stuff like that. I'm not saying it wasn't there. But where they shined was some of the stuff that used a little bit of that trickery as well.
Like I said, their opening salvo was their pack-in game was Battle Arena Toshinden, which was the at the time one of the competitors to Virtual Fighter, and it was fully 3D. In fact, it was you could move your character around in 3 dimensions, things like that.
You could do that. You could do that. You couldn't sidestep in Tekken in the first one.
Yeah, but Tekken wasn't around then. Tekken wasn't a thing.
Virtual Fighter, I don't think you could sidestep either. But it did pan the camera around and showed that it was fully 3D models. But you didn't really
absolutely
move around in 3D.
Yes, it was. Now, the Saturn version of Virtual Fighter 2, for example, was the trickery that you were talking about, where the character models were all 3D, but the backgrounds were 2D.
Wow, Review Tech NLG.
I know he went there. Except I'm in much better shape. Cy was there when it happened. Cy was there when it happened. And yes, I'm a man of my word. Now, I'm not saying the PS1 didn't crush the N64. Of course they did. The price point was better to get. The price point was the same to get into. The games were cheaper. The CD technology allowed for a lot more storage than what you could do in the N64. I'm not talking about which won the console war. I'm talking about which started to kind of push the gaming industry in new directions the most. If that makes sense. I don't know. I
still give that to the N64 and as far as like the 3D graphics and the analog goes.
I would give them the analog, but I would give the 3D to PlayStation.
I think we're gonna have to have an impasse on that one because now the PlayStation 2, Sony completely just kind of takes that whole generation when that starts to come out because they're kind of doing everything in the right footing. But that's when things kind of start to stabilize. By the way, hi Ty Lord. I should have said hi when you came in, but we were busy arguing.
Hey Ty Lord. which we do. Hey, and FP.
And Scepter, you're kind of right. You're kind of right for on one hand because of Doom and stuff like that. But I'm talking about full-on 3D polygons, and you had some of that on PC, but it wasn't as predominant. I don't think around that era.
Not until 3DFX.
I mean, you had some 3D polygonal games. They existed. They were there, but they weren't really. They were kind of the minority, and a lot of them were on stuff like the MSX and stuff like that, which didn't really, or other platforms that were older platforms, but didn't really. Most people didn't find them because they were on like niche platforms that people just didn't play as much or have as much access to. And I think that's kind of why I start to get that to consoles for the most part. The PC has had to kind of evolve things the least, I feel like, mostly because you are, and they do it less from an input standpoint than any of the others because they don't need to. The mouse and keyboard from the get-go, once it ramped up, has been one of the most comfortable input devices for anyone who uses a computer, right?
Yeah, see, I think where the PC did its innovation, because I think we can't leave the PC out of innovation side of things, because I think without the PC, I don't know how far the proliferation. Oh, I'm trying to get the word out.
Proliferation. Blech, I can't talk either.
Proliferation.
Well, eventually we'll get this word out, and it won't matter anymore.
Yes, the proliferation of hashtag mine. The proliferation of genres like FPSs and
Yes.
MMOs and things like I don't know that. Yes, that those games eventually came to console, but the PC is the first place that you ever played Wolfenstein 3D. It's the first place you
Yes.
played Doom. It was the first place you played Quake. It was the first place you played Unreal. There's never really even been a console port of Unreal. And I'm not talking about Unreal Championship or Unreal Tournament. I'm talking about Unreal the game.
Okay.
I've
They've never done like a move on that.
Yeah,
and you've got stuff like Dark Forces and Marathon and stuff like that added the look system into the
remaster.
game.
I cannot wait for that remaster.
Oh god, that comes out Thursday.
I cannot wait.
I'm chomping at the bit to play that. It's killing me.
That's going to be my Thursday night stream.
Carla!
Carla, sister Carla. Yes, it is. Sister Carla, I need you to make an account on Rumble and come over to our channel. We miss you.
I'm just glad you're here, Carla. I don't care where you're
at.
I'm just glad you're here.
Well, he doesn't because he's on YouTube still, but I care. I care about where you are.
And see, Matthews kind of comes up with another point. N64 being one of the better multiplayer consoles of its era. So as far as being able to get a large number of people in from the get-go just by having all the ports there directly in front of you and really focusing on multiplayer, heavy multiplayer in a lot of their games, kind of did a lot for the consoles in that respect.
Well, it's funny. I talk about the N64 as the console that kind of really introduced me in earnest to Nintendo, because up until that time I was diehard Sega until the 64 came out.
You still are to a point. Let's be fair.
Well, of course I am, but I am much less. Like the N64 to me was not only an unbelievable system, but the very first, the first Mario game I really played in earnest was Mario 64, and I 100-starred that sucker. And then, Wave
I think
Race
I got like 100 to 110 on that one, but then
that system, and then we have a Wii. I did not get a Wii U, even though I wanted one. My thing about the Switch, I don't hate the Switch. I just don't have the need for a handheld. That's the thing. I don't have a desire to sit and play a handheld. If the Nintendo Switch was a full-on console, it's likely I would have one. You cannot argue. The one thing that you can never argue with Nintendo, and where their strength has always lied in this industry, is in their catalog. Hey, what's up,
their catalog is amazing, and even they underutilize some of the things in their catalog to a heavy extent.
People are still waiting for Metro Prime 4.
And where's a Kid Icarus game?
Mm-hmm.
F-Zero. They brought a F-Zero 99, but they haven't done anything like new with F-Zero outside of that in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and the strength of Nintendo is in their catalog.
Yeah. Yeah, and Scepter says it almost right after I say it too, is F-Zero. That's another one.
And
they did F-Zero 99, but then they haven't done much with it outside of that. And Sci-Fi's another really good title that they had that had its own like creator mode and stuff where you could make stages. You couldn't save them at the time. But you could on the Famicom. Because the Famicom had the disc system, and you could actually save your stages there. But you could at least make them and
keep in mind, they are still the powerhouse they are without Rare.
Yeah.
They sold Rare to Microsoft and still have a catalog that beats most.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and it's kind of funny because my love of Sega is not my love of current Sega. Although I'm happy to see, I'm
Excitebots.
waiting to see.
I
I think he meant
am.
Excitebike.
I'm excited to see if they come out and they start bringing out more titles with Sega. I would like to see Sega at least start flexing some of their older IPs and bringing some of that stuff back for a newer generation.
They are. You saw that.
I know.
You saw
I saw
that trailer.
I saw that.
And
no,
and
I'm
that
not.
that
I didn't
is
turn a blind eye to that. I'm excited to see those.
that is the Sega that is the Sega that I loved back in the day. It is
Later,
not
Cy. Thanks for popping in, man.
Letters I. It's not the Sega that exists.
Yeah, Matthew's coming
today,
says
to
Kid
be quite
Icarus,
honest.
F-Zero, Punch-Out, Exciteback, Wave Race.
People
Want sequels to these games.
They do. I want to see a Mappy remake.
And
There you
Punch-Out
go.
is an easy win. And if you're looking for that experience
Yes.
and you have a VR headset, Knockout League is a good place to go because it's very much in that vein. And seeing them come back to the console market, if they do it right, then I would like to see that. But I'm so leery about saying no. They should definitely come back in the console market
Yeah,
because
I
they
don't
were awful at consoles.
Think
If anything out of all my history that I've done on them as a company has taught me is that they're terrible at managing their hardware. As far as what they have going on, what they need to cut, what games should go where, and really kind of pushing it and letting the people that know what the market wants in their area do their thing. They kind of want to micromanage it all from Japan and shoot themselves in the foot all the time. And they've done
Right.
it over and over
And they
over
still
and
do it.
over again.
they have just now gotten Sonic back in some old form.
The last couple of Sonic games look good. I need to sit down and spend some time with them, but I've picked up a couple of them. Sonic Origins looks solid. That last, the Superstars one looks
Yeah.
really good. I need to pick that up.
Superstars looks great.
They've got a new one with Shadow coming out, that like Generations with
Yep.
Shadow, that looks like it's going to be solid.
Yeah.
They need to figure out how to do their 3D better. I thought Frontiers was pretty solid, but it did have a lot of repetitive stuff. But I thought, okay, for an open world Sonic game, which is what you're trying to do with this is a pretty good start. Is it perfect?
And so-
No. Does it have a lot of flaws? Absolutely. Would I give it higher than a B? Probably not, but I did 100% it. So that should tell you that I would manage to stay engaged with it long enough to finish everything there is to do in that game. Which should tell you
is good.
something, because I haven't been able to do the
Yeah,
3D Sonic
no.
in a long time.
No, I agree. I totally agree. But I also, it's not the Sonic game that I want, which is why I never played it. That's not Sonic I grew up with.
Well, see, to
they've had a
me,
hard
Sonic
time
Adventure
doing
is
that.
part of what I grew up with. I had the 2D Sonics, but I also played the Sonic Adventure.
Yes. So you felt like Frontiers was on par
I don't
with
think
Sonic
it's
Adventure?
Sonic Adventure good, but I think for what they're trying to do, where the new direction they're trying to go to, it's a good start. And it's probably one of the better 3D titles I had played since Adventure, because I kind of dipped my toe into a couple of the others. Not Adventure 2, but I kind of looked at like Sonic Knights. Sonic Colors honestly looked pretty good. But there was a bunch of others I looked at and I'm just kind of like, I don't think I want to dip my toe in this. But Frontiers looked interesting. And then whatever that abomination was that came out on the 360, the Sonic 2006 thing, that thing, ugh.
Ugh.
And honestly, it does
Now,
not take much
although
for
I
me to
heard
think something's a little bit
Generations-
better than Breath of the Wild, Scepter. Breath of the
Although
Wild was
I
just
heard-
not my cup of tea. I did beat it, and I'm glad I beat it, but it just was not one of the ones that resonated with me like the other Zeldas did.
I heard
Punch-Out
that
Wii was really good. I agree.
that Generations was good, and Generations got a frame rate boost on the Xbox One. I need to try that.
Yeah. Generations had a good mix of 2D and 3D. The problem I had with Generations, at least the version that I played, is sometimes it was kind of hard to figure out the next stage you really needed to go to, because it was kind of an open world with clouds and stuff. You could kind of jump around to try to find the next area. And I found that kind of annoying. If you're going to give me a hub area, just let me kind of maneuver through like roads and stuff to get to there. Don't have me like trying to platform my way to the next stage and try to figure out what's open and what's not. It just didn't appeal to me personally.
Right.
It was kind of a downside. And I didn't feel like it really needed that to tell me the story. So why is it there? It's all kind of confusing. Smooth criminal.
All my favorite people.
I know everybody's popping in tonight. Oh, there's
Everybody's
Pudge.
popping
What's
in.
up, Pudge? Good to see you, man.
Pudge, what's up, man?
I haven't
Pudge
seen
doesn't
Pudge
even
stream in a
come to
long
my-
time. Pudge is
Dude,
usually busy
Pudge
this time of
doesn't even
night,
come
so
to
he doesn't
my
bump in too
streams, and he
much.
comes to your streams. I'm about to guilt
I
Pudge.
haven't seen Pudge in ages on a
Years.
stream, but then I don't
haven't
stream
seen
as
him in
much either,
years.
so I miss a lot of people coming
years.
in. Xander
What's up,
4's in
Pudge?
here. I think that's the first time I've seen Xander. Hey, Xander, good to see you.
Welcome, Xander 4. So once we get past the Xbox, right? If we're talking about the Xbox having, the first hard drives, the
Hey, everybody.
what's up? We are the show. The broadband built in started to do all these. Oh, it's a Fused is rating us. Nice.
Is that what's
Fused,
going
brother
on?
Fused.
Okay, that's
We
what's
are
going
being
on. I
rated.
wondered. Because there's FP. I'm like, all right, what
Nice.
happened?
Fused said, what the heck?
Thank you for the raid, Fused.
What's up,
Thank you
Fused?
so much.
Brother
Fused coming in
Other
with
Mike
one
is
of my
in the
favorite
house.
emotes. I love that cat. I freaking love that cat.
What's up, boys and girls? Oh, nice. We've been rated.
We have been. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Oh, we got some dancing bumblebees too. We got a little Mario bouncing around. All right, we got a party going on.
I
now.
gotta show you how to do the floating emojis.
Yeah, I need to do the floating emojis and stuff like that too. I gotta spend some time working on it. Honestly, I need to set up an actual stream schedule and then just kind of stick with it. It's one of the things that's been kind of on my mind to do this year, so I can take a break from editing and play for a couple hours, even if it's just an hour, and do that, and then go back to what I'm doing, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
but anyway, it's kind of on my mind of stuff to do here. Everybody's using all the emojis, and it's awesome. Thank you so much. Use my original Xbox, more the ability to rip all my CDs to its hard drive and use it as a jukebox. That's honestly, that was a really good use for it. And there were a lot of games that supported that, your personalized soundtracks. I think Project Gotham supported it. I want to say Fusion Frenzy supported it. And there were a couple other games that actively supported it too. Oh, I like that one. The dog, everything is fine. We're all fine. Everything's fine. Let's go! Emotes! So,
but
you were talking so we got at least the hard drive thing for Xbox, because that's the first time on the console that a hard drive had actually been in there. We can argue all day about the validity of the online from that, because there had been a lot of attempts at that up to that point. You had Intellivision doing it back in like the early 80s. You had the Sega Netlink on the Genesis. You had the Satellaview on the Super Famicom. You had the Saturn with a link into that with a 56K modem built into it, which I don't think I'd even paid much attention to on that. The Dreamcast definitely had it built in, and you had a broadband adapter that you could change out to on that, because that module was removable. And then you had Xbox come in that was basically trying to make it more mainstream, which most of Japan was laughing at, because they didn't feel like the infrastructure was really there to be able to support full-on broadband connectivity. And Xbox was betting that the infrastructure would be there eventually for that to really take off. And about a year or so after they had actually kicked off, that's when it really seemed to kind of come together. And they were ready to start with Xbox Live, which started to change the way that we kind of approached online gaming on consoles. Now, I stress consoles. PC had already been doing this kind of stuff. A lot of this the PC had already been doing. Oh, we got all the bouncing Marios. What's up, Fred? Typing FPS on Dreamcast. Yeah, there you go. There's another one. That
Typing of the Dead.
There was actually an arcade version of Typing of the Dead.
I know.
I found it the other day, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. 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 They never work because the keyboards are typically broken. But yeah.
Because they were pulling a silver fox. I both empathized and felt for the man. I'm like, I've been there.
Until he spent $650 on his replacement stuff. And
I'm God, I'm so terrible at karaoke, man. I can't stand the sound of my own voice or other people singing karaoke. It just makes my brain scream. That's why I don't show up on those often. I know everybody's having a blast. I'm so terrible at it. I think I'm going to have to give myself a lot of liquid courage to go do that.
Just come with us. Peter did
Shots
it.
fired. Dude, I only tease him about it because I've frankly been, and my wife's seen it, where I've gotten so mad sometimes that I've almost broken a keyboard. I have broken a keyboard before. So it's kind of been, it's happened before. It doesn't happen often because the gear is just too expensive. A good keyboard's a really nice keyboard's like $200.
Watch him play Revenge of Shinobi on the Genesis. That's all you need.
You know, who beat that? This guy. It took me 3.5 hours. After I'd been practicing it for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Ninja Gaiden was another rough one. I beat that on stream. I got there eventually. It took me 4 hours. Keep a Dell keyboard handy. Those things are the worst. Yeah, Kara's like, you just need more alcohol.
Exactly. Everybody can sing. Everybody can sing when you've got alcohol. And I mean when everybody else is drunk.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving past that, we start getting into the era where Nintendo starts to do weird crap. And honestly, this is where I feel like they both... I feel like they really tried to throw things out there to make people look and play at things differently. The DS is a good example in handhelds for having two screens that work in conjunction with each other.
Which is funny because that wasn't their first. There were flip-up Game & Watches that had two screens.
There were, but they weren't interchangeable cart systems. I mean, it's kind of like, okay.
No, they weren't.
You can look at the Game Boy and go, well, they have interchangeable carts on this, and this is handheld gaming on the go. Yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of pushing things forward, but if you want to give credit to that, you have to go to the Microvision because it had the first interchangeable carts. Right?
I remember the Microvision.
And I mean, was it a really good system? Debatably, no, not by today's standards, but it was a start, right? And you look at the Game Boy the same way. You can look at the Game Gear and say, well, graphically, it's much better than the Game Boy. Yeah, but it didn't have the game support. The Game Boy had a beat hands down with game selection and game support from the console. They were just really pushing to make unique handheld experiences on there that I don't feel like the Game Gear ever fully captured as much as I loved my Game Gear, right? And there are certain games I adored on there. Like I loved my version of MK. I loved Chakan. I loved the Revenge of Shinobi they had on there. There were a lot of really good games on there. So it's not like there weren't good games, but I just feel like Nintendo had dominated that market. The DS is where they really tried to heavily incorporate that second screen and do unique game experiences that way. And that then they kind of moved into the Wii, where they tried to get people more familiar and more interested in getting up and moving around and interacting with each other with motion controls and having fun that way and doing unique control schemes, right? If you go back to the N64, you start looking at things like the Rumble Pack becoming more of a mainstay. That was kind of like the first time I remember a Rumble Pack on a console, right? I think some PC controllers like the Microsoft Sidewinder line and their flight sticks have tried to do that, but it was the first time it had actually hit on a console, and that became a mainstay in controllers.
Yeah, because right after that, then the Dreamcast had Rumble Packs, and then controllers. The Xbox. I don't think Xbox had a Rumble Pack, though.
Did it?
Did not.
I remember it actually had a slot for a memory card, but I don't know if they ever did a Rumble Pack for it. And the memory card was mostly so you could take saves with you on the go. You didn't need it for the main console, but if you wanted to, say, go to a friend's house and still have your game, that was a way of doing it.
Also eventually that slot also became the slot for your headset when Xbox Live came out.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I don't have my headset anymore. I wish I did because I was a beta tester and it had my gamer
Did the
tag
original
on
Xbox have internal rumble? I can't remember if the original Xbox controller had internal rumble. That Duke controller was big enough you could have freaking stored a fridge in it.
I've got all the controllers. They do not rumble.
Okay. Because I don't think the Japanese one did. And that was my favorite one on the Xbox. The Duke I played with, but that thing was it was tough on my small hands. Like my hands were not. I didn't have like monster size hands like freaking Shaquille O'Neal. So that controller was not built for me.
No, the S controller was better. The Mad Catz S controller was fantastic, and
I never messed with the Mad Catz one. I waited, I think, till the official one came out. I used that one a lot.
My favorite Xbox controller.
Okay, so Indy's saying, yeah, the Xbox had a Rumble Pack add-on.
It didn't. It really didn't. I would have had it. It did not have a Rumble Pack add-on. And Scepter's right. No Rumble until the 360.
Yeah, the 360 had it built in.
So, but my favorite controller, let me grab it real quick because this is a great controller. And this is where accessory manufacturers, I think, did as much innovation as anybody.
Sorry, I'm looking this up to see if they had a Rumble Pack or had it built in. Because I don't remember. It's been so long since I messed with the original Xbox. I legitimately do not remember.
So this is the Nyko Airflow controller.
Hold on, let me see if I can get you in a solo view here. There we go.
It's in an S configuration, but there's a fan on the back, and the fan blows air into the side slots and these back areas.
So that's to keep your hands from sweating too much while you're playing the controller.
And besides that, it is a damn comfortable, like very comfortable, easy controller. It's such a rock solid thing. I've had this thing.
I'm just asking if there was a third party that made a Rumble Pack for the Xbox, because I'm not.
I've never seen one. I've never seen one.
Yeah, I remember the memory card. I remember it having a slot on there so you could like install like a memory card. I never used it because I didn't take my games anymore.
In fact, they had 2 slots.
Yeah, I remember that.
And one slot you could put memory cards in there.
The original Xbox controller would break your fingers if it rumbled. It was a beastly controller. Right, the Duke was not to be tinkered with, not to be laughed at.
No, I would have seen. Trust me, at the time,
the Duke was a monster.
Had there been a Rumble Pack for that original Xbox, and especially with Mad Catz, because I was very tight with Mad Catz as part of NLG, I would have had one. I trust me, would have had one.
Just like, yeah, the Duke would rumble your balls off. Yeah, if they put like an actual real Rumble Pack in that thing, oh my god. It's just a monster of a controller. Didn't they remake that thing and have like an LCD screen?
Yes,
where the huge Xbox logo was a while back.
Hyperkin
I didn't want it, but I looked at it and went, I'd be tempted to have it just for the novelty.
I know.
Just for the novelty of it. I mean, I would never want to use it as a controller because there's just no way I can use a controller effectively. I mean, I did when I was a kid because it's what I had, right? So I made do with it until the Japanese one came out, and then as soon as I bought that, I'm like, I'm done with the Duke. I can't do this anymore. Your wife would steal your Duke.
Oh my God, Scepter.
Pudge. If you can find one, they might still be floating around, but yeah, they re-released the Duke as like an anniversary of Xbox at some point. And I kid you not, they slapped like an LCD screen, and I think it might have even done the old Xbox boot up logo on the screen, which would have been just chef's kiss for that controller. That would have been freaking brilliant if they did that. And Mike's run off again. Mike, come back so I can mute you. No, really, come back. Here we go.
There it is.
Now that's the original Duke, right? That's not the
Yep.
that's not the re-release one, right?
That's not the S.
Yeah.
No, this is the original Duke because I've got the, and it's got the, yeah, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And this sucker, this was a beast.
Yeah, such a big controller. Yeah, the Duke controllers, I bet you those are expensive. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest because people, I didn't think there was a huge market for them, but people were clamoring for that thing.
They really were.
And it's interesting to see people going back and collecting Xbox consoles and controllers. That's kind of fantastic. God help him with the 360, man.
The Xbox had some insanely good games.
The original Xbox, I give a lot of credit for, and I wish they had stuck to their guns with that when they moved to the 360 because they made the hard drive optional, and I don't think they should have done that. Because one of the nice things about the Xbox, and I always hold the original Halo up as an example of this, is that was such a fluid game because of the hard drive. Because they could cache little bits of data on there at a time. You really did feel like you never had load time. The game felt very seamless as you were playing it. And even the collector's edition doesn't capture how that game felt when you were playing it on the OG Xbox because you have load screens between stages on them now with the way they've done it because there's not a good way to cache the high-res textures and stuff like that. It's just not a technology that works now. But because it was built with that architecture in mind and they could do some tricks with it, they really could do some cool things that you kind of couldn't do with other consoles. And that's the kind of stuff that I feel like needs to kind of stick around. And that's kind of why we brought this topic to the plate anyway. I don't know how good a job we're doing on it, but, we're...
Well, as always, we had, hey, what's up, Thumb? I'm sorry I missed you up there. Thumb's with us.
Yeah, I said hi to Thumb.
I did not get a chance.
I'm glad Thumb is here.
It's probably running off to get my controller.
There is. There's at least in the States. There's a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia for the original Xbox brand.
There's a lot of nostalgia, and it's why people are so upset today about where the entire industry is going because even Microsoft is sitting on take Rare out of the equation for a minute, even though I think Rare was an important part of the original Xbox's appeal because I'll be honest with you, I even enjoyed Grab by the Ghoulies, and I know that was a very
that's one of those I need to go back and play. Like I saw it there, and I don't think
it was critically panned. It was not a well.
I don't even think I looked at reviews
game.
on it. I just looked at it and went, I don't know if this is something I would actively enjoy, and I kind of shied away from it. Right?
It's kind of a. I don't want to say it's a precursor to Luigi's Mansion, but it's kind of in that vein. I
didn't remember The Rock being at the reveal. I guess he was, wasn't he? God, it was ages ago.
The Rock, yeah, he was there. Him and Bill Gates up on stage
That's
together.
crazy to think about. That's pretty fantastic.
Yep.
And that's before The Rock really got like huge. I mean, he was kind of making a name for himself in wrestling, but he'd had bit parts in like acting, but he wasn't a big actor. He was starting to kind of find his stride in the wrestling arena around that time too, and getting really big.
There's a lot of even without Rare, although Rare did have a lot to do with Xbox's success. Even without Rare, the IPs that Microsoft had that they still kind of have, even Voodoo Vince, Blinks, Fusion Frenzy,
Blinks
Project
is one I haven't heard of
Racing.
in a while. I forgot about Blinks.
Yeah. And that's a game that had two really solid titles. They were very solid titles, and then Microsoft shelved them.
Yeah. Center's like if they bought Sega. Everybody keeps talking about that, and I'm torn on the acquisitions thing. And on one hand, if the company's struggling and they're not really going to be able to push out content, or they're going to have problems being able to really move things forward without the support of a larger company, then maybe it's a good thing that somebody buys them up. But I also feel like, and in some cases, not all, the individual voices get lost. And when you have an acquisition like that, you do tend to lose a solid amount of talent. And when you lose that talent, it it becomes a detriment to the company because then the company's not what it was, right? Because the original people that were passionate about, that made the games that you're really passionate about, their voices aren't there. And so the company's never quite the same, right? You see it with BioWare. You see it to an extent with Rare.
Rare was
Rare's
exactly
not
that.
quite the company that they were, you know?
No, they aren't, because the two co-creators left, the co-founders, they left.
So it becomes this thing of like, it's kind of bittersweet in a lot of ways. Like, and we all know Sega's not the same company that it was back in its heyday, because those people they're retired, or they moved on to other companies, or, whatnot. And it's not to say that there aren't good people there with good ideas there. I'm absolutely certain there are great people there with great ideas. They left with a trunk full of Benjamins. Yeah, they probably absolutely did. Well, yeah, and Blinks, you're right. Blinks is probably in Game Pass. And that's one of the things that doesn't get mentioned about the Xbox ecosystem that has become a bigger thing of late, is the backwards compatibility and getting a lot of those things onto Game Pass. But my concern is moving forward, we start to lose a lot of these individual innovations. The Wii U with its second screen, which when utilized was phenomenal, right? You have the hard drive integration is going to be a thing moving forward on any console generation. VMUs, that's kind of a standard thing, but it was a big move at the time.
Revolutionary.
Do what?
I mean, the VMU on the
VMU, and I would like to see a version of that come back, but my concern with that is being able to make a controller that has a solid battery life with a screen or something like that attached to it. Or if you want to go another route with it, you could connect, like, say, your phone or something like that to it through a clip or something, and allow it to kind of like utilize that screen with an application that you bring up and kind of utilize it that way. But if you try to build in a screen, that's kind of a touch and go kind of thing, because people already complain about the PlayStation 5's battery life on the controller of only being like about 4 hours. And even I've killed that thing, and I don't game that heavily that often. Even I've ended up plugging in the controller from time to time on that. Whereas I can boot up the Switch one and not use it for 3 weeks and then play for 12 hours, put it down, come back in a couple weeks and play for another 10 before I have to plug that thing in again. It's ridiculous. Well, Sega has Atlas, right? Yeah. Goku to keep them relevant. Yeah, absolutely. And they're bringing in some of their own stuff. I don't know if you've seen a lot of these, but they had their announcement a while back. They're starting to do stuff with Crazy Taxi.
Yep.
They're going to.
That is what I'm most waiting on. Golden Axe,
another Shinobi game. I think wasn't there like a Daytona style game that was announced too?
I didn't see Daytona. There was Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage.
Golden Axe, that's it. Streets of Rage.
Shinobi. Altered Beast was on that list. Like, they need to do another Outrun. They need to do, like, I would love to see a Daytona.
Yeah, that looks great fused. I'm kind of excited to see that. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
That's the one you were talking about earlier.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and the 360 relied a ton on third-party titles, so they neglected their first-party stuff. He takes absolutely correct on that. And that's where a lot of these have gone. That's why you see...
I would say towards the back end.
Some of these in the same state they are. And we were talking about this earlier, too. Like, outside of the innovations that Nintendo does and doing a very good job of tailoring their hardware for just what they need for that generation. Because Nintendo doesn't lose money on their consoles. That's what a lot of people don't pay attention to. They don't put like $1,000 to $2,000 worth of hardware into a console and then sell it and lose like money hand over fist on the console to get you into the ecosystem. They build it to a budget to where they make a profit on the console when the console's sold.
And they have, and it's what I said earlier, they have the games to back it up.
Absolutely. And they have the titles to back it up, and they can always build their titles to run efficiently and be fun and play cleanly on the platform.
Good games will always trump hardware. It just will.
Absolutely.
which is why so many people are going back to retro and
So if
finding.
you've not played a Bobo's Adventure, which is like an indie game that's out there, a Bobo's Great Adventure, you should find that. It's kind of amazing.
And I'll go back to the Dreamcast and the OG Xbox and some PlayStation and stuff to see some of those games that were just so high quality in its time. Oh, Jet Set Radio, that's the other one that's coming.
There have been a few bad running first-party Nintendo games. You're
Oh,
correct.
of course, everybody's got that. But that I would say that is the exception to the rule with Nintendo.
It is, and the last couple of Pokemon games have been a little sketch. And I'm talking first-party games. I'm not talking like third-party titles. Like Mortal Kombat 1's a mess on the Switch. But then if you were going into the Switch going, it'll run MK1 perfect and it's going to look just like it does in the trailers, then you're delusional. There was no way. It can't. Not for what they want to do. That's why if you have an alternative console to buy that on, or you can buy it on PC and your PC's up to spec, that's where you buy that game. Because you're going into it for graphic fidelity. You don't go to a Nintendo console for graphic fidelity. You go to them for good game and a good time. Thus, good game better than good hardware.
It's why I'm so excited for the prospect.
Okay,
of
so
some
Show
of
did
those
catch
Sega
that.
games.
Bobo's Big Adventure. Yes, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, I would rather play a good Crazy Taxi game.
Andy, that's kind of tempting.
Yakuza.
I love that. I think those things are badass looking.
And I know Fused is kind of the he's very big into those games, the personas and not the FPS,
and
the,
a lot
the
of those
RPG
run
side of
really
the
good on
house.
Nintendo system. The Xenogear stuff that's on there runs great. I've watched you play a ton of that. I mean, there's a lot of bobs and stuff in there that you're looking forward to and things like that, but the gameplay is solid. It runs good. It plays good. And that's what you want. That's what you're looking for out of that, right? I mean, what more are you asking for out of them?
All right, bring this next one up from Fuse because he hit the nail on the head, and I think this is a topic for its own night.
Chasing the 8 to 22-year-old market?
Yeah.
And that's fair. And honestly, that's the market that they have to aim towards. I think I missed something from Thumb.
Be that market.
Did I miss something from Thumb? Oh, okay. He's just saying he's hanging out playing some games. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I was kind of had YouTube's chat, which is obviously slower than Rumble's chat. So I was trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody over there in the barrage of stuff that we're getting. And Fused, I felt that way for a little bit. Like, and that's part of what brought us to this is because a lot of Sony and Microsoft's ecosystem are kind of becoming sympathetic or synergistic to where it kind of feels like the same platform already to an extent.
Yes.
You have a couple exclusives that stand out, but those are fewer and fewer between because they're just not getting those out there. And they're spending a lot of time effectively remastering the same game, like The Last of Us getting a remaster on every console generation and tying up a major developer just rehashing the same game as opposed to letting them do something.
Well, and the other thing
new.
that everybody's doing nowadays is they're all chasing the same fad, right?
Yeah.
So there's yet another, and look, I'm not saying this to poke at anybody who's playing it, but there's yet another battle royale game out there that is starting to get played. And so
You're not talking about, well, it's not Finals because Finals is something else.
No, Hawked. Well, the Finals was one. Hawked. There's, everybody, like, we just chase these fads, and that's what, I find that Nintendo or Microsoft and Sony have gone to play it safe route.
And Porpoise, I agree with you with indie devs, but indie devs are what Mike's talking about now. Indie devs are guilty about doing too, because you can throw a rock and you can hit about 30 Metroidvania games, right?
Yes.
That are all indie games, and they're great. I love those things, but I mean,
roguelike.
like you're seeing an idiotic amount of them, right? Or Mega Man style games or just general platforming games. They do push a lot of stuff, but you'll see a lot of them that come out with like very similar ideas, very similar art styles. Occasionally you'll see something come out that's weird and like just out there that'll like really like Pacific. I think it's called Pacific Drive, which feels very different. Neat. Right.
That looks neat.
Or Papers, Please, which is, while it's not for everybody, it's definitely got like this unique vibe and feel to it, right? That you'll see come out. But then you'll see something like, say, Ark Survival Evolved, and then you'll see Pal World. While Ark is relatively unique, it takes the survival crafting and it kind of tries to evolve that by giving you pets and things like that you can fight with. Pal World takes Pokemon and Ark and part of Conan's survival game and kind of mashes it together into a composite game, right? And you see a lot of that happening too. But that happens in every market. That's not just happening in indie. That happens in AAA. That happens in mobile, right? Like Flappy Bird's hit, and then you saw like 8 million Flappy Bird clones happen.
Exactly.
Or AFK Arena is like a spinoff of like all the other arena type games with the leveling characters and the microtransactions that came out before it, right? So you see all those things coming in and piling on each other because everybody wants a piece of that, right?
And
purposes have trouble with this keyboard.
That's where I think they're falling down on that job, is that we're not getting another Cameo. We're not getting another Conquer. We're not getting another SOCOM or a Killzone. We're not getting the games that we
I haven't
want.
heard of Xeno Runners. That sounds fun. I'll have to look that up. Or just show up on Pudge's stream. When are you doing that one, Pudge? Like what time? Because I'm home most of the day on Thursday, so I can try to make a point to be there. You could have taken a break from games between 1994 and 2023 and still pick up and have a good feel of where we're at. Absolutely. You don't see a lot of games like Xeno Runners. I'm saying again, I wanted to see more revolutionary developments coming from the indie world, not the same old shovelware. Absolutely.
But the problem is the more
okay, you're starting at 11 a.m. Okay,
out
cool.
there, the more they pump out, the more, unfortunately, the more shovelware you get. It's just the natural order of things.
It is, and those things work. But then you end up with like weird outliers, which while it wasn't necessarily a hit for me as far as me being into it, I can recognize it for what it was. And Hi-Fi Rush was kind of a breath of fresh air in that space, right? Because it had that kind of platforming gameplay, but it added a bit of that rhythm combat in there, right? So it blended a couple of things that were going on in the industry, but it did it in a way that it felt fresh and kind of new, right?
Oh, Psychonauts.
Yeah, Psychonauts.
Was so good.
Shovel Knight was amazing.
Shovel Knight was excellent. Excellent game. Bloodstained was great.
Bloodstained's a great game. I
actually
just funded that one.
Game
That's
Pass.
A very good game.
Yep. Curse of the Moon just came back into Game Pass too. Destroy All Humans. Oh my goodness.
Destroy All Humans. That game got frustratingly busy for me because I was going through the remake on that, and it got very frustrating at one point because there was so much going on. I was really struggling to keep on top of what they wanted me to do in that game. I'm like, where do you need me? Because every time I go to handle an area, another wave comes in from some other direction and just trashes everything. Like, where am I supposed to be?
I enjoyed that game.
I mean, it's a great game, but it got very frustrating in parts.
Yeah, we were lucky to get a Psychonauts too. And I don't know what Double Fine is working on at the moment.
I don't either. They almost do a lot of AAA stuff. They do more AAA than they do AA than they do
Microsoft money
AAA.
now.
Do
They've
what?
got Microsoft money now.
I know, but they're still doing their quirky stuff. They're still doing them, and that's what you want them to do. Them and Devolver Digital, right? You don't go to them. They could do AAA, but you don't. They don't look at themselves as a big AAA studio. They look at them as the person that does the goofy off the wall stuff, right?
But yeah, so here's where Devolver is. the product of its.
He mostly just anal probe people. There you go.
Yes.
That's how you play.
Here's
Destroy all
the Devolver,
humans.
though, is the product of their own success. They could say that all they want, but I'll be damned if Trek to Yomi shouldn't have been a Game of the Year candidate. I mean, Trek to Yomi was a Devolver Digital game, and that is a.
I never dug into that one, but by that time the one I really wanted to get into was Ghost, and Ghost was worth every moment I spent on it.
So was Death's Door.
It was an amazing
Death's Door
game.
was a phenomenal game by Devolver, and that was full fleshed out.
Stubbs the Zombie got a re-release on the Switch, an HD re-release on the Switch, and I think it hit Steam and a couple other things too. But that one got a re-release, and that was I like the vibe out of that game. I'm not a big zombie game guy, but that kind of 50s vibe, I really thought that aesthetic was cool.
No. Yeah, we just talked about Beyond Evil 2. I don't know
where they're going with the game. I don't think they know where they're going with that game.
I don't think that
Perfect
game's
Dark.
coming.
They've literally, no pun intended, gone dark.
Yeah. Matt
they've
Booty
just,
claims
vanished.
Matt
with that
Booty
title.
claims that he has seen it and it's looking good. So the whole thing with Perfect Dark was they built up this studio filled with superstars, the Initiative, and they got Gallagher is still the head of it, but they pulled people from Insomniac and Crystal Dynamics and all these people. And then the whole studio went into some sort of intra fighting or whatnot. Everybody left the studio. And so they pulled in Crystal Dynamics to work on Perfect Dark. And then Crystal Dynamics got bought by Embracer Group from Square. So the word is they're still working on the game, but they're also trying to work on their own Tomb Raider again. So who the hell knows what's going on with
and Scepter, I may end up streaming on Thursday Dark Forces if it gets up and it boots up and it runs reasonably well. That might be what I end up doing my Thursday evening.
That's definitely what I'm doing.
I could see myself
Thursday.
Getting sucked into that easily on Thursday.
If that is coming out on Thursday and it's on Xbox on Thursday, that is definitely going to be my Thursday night
It's supposed
stream.
to drop on Thursday, on the 28th, and that would be Thursday. Now, what platforms it's going to be available on that day, I don't know. I would imagine whatever platforms they've announced it on. Right? I don't know if it'll be in Game Pass.
I know it's coming out on Xbox, but if it's coming,
I don't think it'll be Game
then
Pass day one. I would be surprised.
It's not. I don't believe it's Game Pass.
Just go Power Slave on Switch.
Power Slave. Man.
But Night Dive Studio's been doing a really good job on remasters. Now, they haven't been doing a lot that I would consider like anything new in the industry. But I think part of my point of our topic is we should probably start winding this down here in a little bit is that these hardware generations and these hardware revisions and the new ideas that the consoles bring. And by the way, this topic is a topic that I had discussed on Panda Sub 2000's channel as a part of like one of his master debaters, and it seemed like a good topic to have here with all of you guys. And it's been long enough since he's done that topic. I don't feel too bad using that topic again, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. He was one of the ones that posed this on whether or not you have one console or one hardware type, and that's the only hardware type you have, or you have these disparate consoles with their exclusives and their unique hardwares, and which way should it go? And so we had a long discussion on that, talking about just these things, about how the various different hardware and the approaches to the hardware affects the software, and how the competition of trying to stand out amongst each other in these areas is exactly what pushes the medium forward. Just as basically the games came out that pushed graphics cards to the point to where they'd fall over and die, push the graphics card market, a lot of the evolution in a lot of the gaming has come from console developers trying to stand out in an ever-growing crowd of games and controllers and various different gimmicks to bring people there, along with their own titles and their own spins on it that represent their hardware in the best way possible, right? And those kinds of things are the kind of thing that need to kind of stay around, because that's what pushes a lot of the innovation. And the more these things just become services, as we've seen with a lot of streaming services, the rush to get something out starts to hurt the quality, right? So it kind of combines two topics that I discussed with Panda at one point. It'll all be apps on our televisions in 20 years' time. Yeah, that's the problem. PC Master Race, there can be only one. Yeah. Mixed levels between PlayStation and PC. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I don't have any problem with some of these titles hitting various different platforms, but there needs to be an arena where these consoles can come out. Because I guarantee you, if in a generation or two, these are basically just services from like Xbox and Sony, somebody else is going to hit the market within a couple of years of that, because you're only going to have games as a service for so long with things rotating in and out of there before people are going to start getting fed up with them, because people are already starting to get fed up with digital. Like, I've started moving back to physical myself, and I was going almost all digital with a lot of my movies and stuff, and I've started buying them physically because it becomes a pain in the butt to find them on streaming, or they disappear right as you want to sit down and watch it, or it was on there forever and now it's moved to this other platform. So now I've got to go pay for another platform to get access to that content again. Or they lose a licensing agreement with somebody and the entire content just gets pulled. Sony did that just recently with stuff that people had literally purchased. It was part of their library. They weren't streaming it, they bought it to have it digitally. And if it wasn't on their hard drive, it was gone. You couldn't access it anymore. You're done. And that's the kind of stuff that you have to start thinking about too when you're moving forward. It's not, if people are doing it closer to the way Steam does it, where they try to keep those things relevant and playable for the people who have bought them and try to keep most of that stuff on there. Not that they're completely immune, but they've done a better job with it, I feel like, than most of these ecosystems outside of Xbox, who's done a very good job of trying to bring that stuff forward. But you still have this rotating library of stuff that comes in and out, and that becomes more and more problematic. And stuff like that right there, and it makes piracy completely justified. And I agree with that, and I don't agree with that, because I do plenty of piracy myself. I'm all, yar! Sell the digital seas, me hearty. Because I do plenty of it. Trust me, if you see me doing a retro stream, it's all emulation.
Most of mine is, yeah.
But I can't argue with people that say just because you can't get your hands on something doesn't mean you have a right to get your hands on something. However, I do feel like the manufacturers need to take a better hand of, if there's a market for these things, then they need to find a way to get these things out to people. But they need to find a way to make these things stay accessible without tying up their major development teams and stopping innovation. I feel like we've hit a standstill in a lot of the market where everybody's reaching back in the past for these old titles. And Nintendo's doing this too with Super Mario RPG, which looks fantastic. I can't wait to play it. I've got a copy of it now. And the Donkey Kong remaster game and all these DS games and 3DS games that they're moving forward to the Switch, that they're reaching back for these titles and remastering them so people can access them now, which is all well and good. But the problem becomes, when do you move forward? When are you making new stuff? Are you dedicating too many teams to revitalizing these old titles and not coming out with new titles and new IPs? Like, Nintendo's dropped at least one IP that I can think of that they came out in recent time with ARMS. Now, it didn't have a great launch, but I thought it had a lot of potential to be something special. But they haven't done much with it. Now, they're still doing stuff with Splatoon, which is one of their newer IPs that they've done. But they also have a huge backlist of other IPs that we've talked about during the stream that they aren't doing anything with, that they can also do stuff with. And I'm not saying, like, bring Kid Icarus forward and remaster it or anything like that. Make a brand new game.
Make a brand new game.
Yeah, make something new.
And Redsnom, you know, platforms are all moving to a games as a service. That's where I think the industry is going wrong.
That's where Microsoft wanted to go with this generation, with the series generation period. And I said that before they launched it. That was their long-term game plan. They wanted, because they were talking about not having exclusives. They were talking about Game Pass. They were talking about dropping a bunch of things on Game Pass. It was going to be on PC and it was going to be on the console day one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I told people then, I said, they're going to try to be an ecosystem. They don't want to be a hardware platform because that's never been Microsoft's strong point. Microsoft's strong point has always been in software and software distribution. That's always been where they've excelled. And they've expanded that into cloud services too. So this dovetails right into being a service and having you connecting to their servers. So wherever you're at, you can connect to their Azure cloud servers and then spin up an instance of the game and be able to play the game remotely through your Wi-Fi connection or your hard line or whatever. It doesn't even have to be on your system. You can just stream it from their servers locally. When you're done, it tears down your session. That's where they want to be. Because then they have complete control over it too. You have no control over it. You can't hack it as much. You can't cheat on it as much. If they want to change anything on it, they can do that easily. And they can do it from one location. They don't have to touch multiple locations. They hit the one data center and they're done. And that's where they've been wanting to go. Yeah, absolutely. They've been pushing as a service, just like the Office 365 and everything else like that. That's absolutely where they've wanted to go.
And even Sony. That's why Sony bought Bungie, because they want that. And
you're absolutely right. Data collection, all the data analytics they get from you being connected to their servers. They can use that to tell what game's working, what times are working, what the player base, what the age base. They can start changing all their marketing and stuff to target you with various different games of that type. They can sell it to other people to help them do all their marketing and everything that way. Absolutely.
Everything is MAU, monthly access users.
But as we go into that era, it becomes more about their metrics and it becomes less about innovating the game space, which we've already hit a stagnant part of it. I mean, if you look at the game space now and you look at any number of games, you're looking at a lot of things that feel the same to the things that you were playing 2 and 3 years ago. Across the board, Nintendo's the most different of those. But even when you look at Nintendo, you're looking at a lot of the same themes, a lot of the same mechanics. You'll see some innovation stuff. Like I feel like Odyssey had some neat mix of 2D versus 3D game mechanics and some interesting worlds and things that they were doing there. But it's not this huge evolution or change like when you went from Super Mario World to Mario 64, right? It's not that kind of leap. You're just not getting there with that kind of thing. Not anymore. Not the way things are right now. That's not to say they can't be shook up or somebody can't come in and shake that up. But they really haven't felt the need to.
No, because people are making money on this.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that's been a problem, Retsum, is the mechanics are both being... a lot of times they're overloaded, right? Like Ghost of Tsushima used everything and then some on the controller, and it was manageable because you kind of grew into it. But there's nothing wrong with having a 2-button architecture. I go back and play retro games all the time, and 2 buttons is all I need to boot that game up, understand it, play it, and get a damn good challenge out of it.
Right.
And a fair challenge. Like, you can boot up Contra on the NES now and play it, and you're going to get a balanced challenge. It's going to kick you in the teeth, but as you start understanding it, you start going, oh, this isn't so bad anymore. I can learn this. I can do this. And that leads you into that one more game mentality, right? Ninja Gaiden pushes that a little bit further, but still, you can start to learn it. You can start to master it in your own way. If you put the time in. There's people that finish that game in like 11 minutes and less. The game's doable. For all the jank and weirdness that's in there, the game is doable. It takes your effort into going in and learning it. And that's with a simple control scheme of like 2 buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, physical Pokemon's going to be like $1,000 in the future, and that wouldn't surprise me. Those physical games, people are going to want those things.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where my headspace is at. Just to kind of rant about the industry as a whole, as we kind of wrap up what we're talking about with But I think the main takeaway from me to kind of try to focus myself, and this is why I write scripts, guys, because talking off the cuff is not my strongest point for anybody who's like new here, is the hardware innovations lead to new thought processes, which lead to new game types. When you stop innovating the hardware and you start doing minor changes like, well, this has rumble when raindrops hit. Okay, that's cool and that's nice, but that's not changing the way I interact with the game. It changes how the game feels, and it's nice when it's used right, but it doesn't change my basic gameplay experience. It doesn't revolutionize my gameplay experience. It doesn't bring me new experiences by the fact that that's there, because rumble starts to not be noticeable after a bit for anybody who's used it for a long period of time, right? Imagine games come with God mode now. Yeah, see Psychonauts 2. And on top of that, there's a God mode type thing in Hades that reduces like incoming damage by like up to 70, 80, or 90%. Cuffs are my specialty. What's up, JDA? I didn't see you sneak in. Talking more along the lines of map levels, objectives, map interactivity, Half-Life 2 being a landmark game used for most everything for map physics instead of pushing, grinding, or crafting. Absolutely. So you saw innovations with that in the PC market as far as physics engines go. There was a big rush to add physics into everything. Then survival crafting games started coming around. Now you can't turn around. Even all the God of War games have a crafting system. Everything has a crafting system, right? Everything has the same open world, go here, do this mission, or go protect this, or go here and kill the baddies here and then come back, or go grab this and come back, or go craft this and come back. They're not trying to find new ways to engage the audience. There are games that do that, right? Like, I am toast, or I am bread. That's a great example of a very simple game with a very simple premise of just finding a way to make a piece of bread toast. It's silly, it's stupid, but it's brilliant. Katamari Damacy is another one.
Oh,
you roll around a little ball and you pick stuff up. And
what
it's
a weird ass game.
It's such a weird game, but I love it.
Right? I do too.
It's so different. I love it.
I do too.
We're all wrong here, guys. See, this says the Suicide Squad. The game will live for over a decade. Games as a service for the win.
Okay, but I do want to say,
and Mario's being facetious with that, because that game has not done as well as they hoped.
But there are games that do, and I think that you have to. For every Suicide Squad, there is a Sea of Thieves, there is a Fortnite, right. There is an Apex Legends, there is a. There are games that in the right formula can do it. The problem is everybody's chasing it, and that's where it gets saturated. So a game like Suicide Squad, which was made by a really good developer. I mean, don't forget, Rocksteady is not a slouch of a developer, but everybody's chasing that shiny object, and you're not going to hit.
I kind of feel like Rocksteady got pushed into that because Warner Brothers wanted.
Well, of course. Well, like Warner Brothers is,
and
Warner
they kind of got pushed into it. Kind of like BioWare got pushed in the direction they did with Anthem because somebody threw out a trailer and they went, I guess we just need to make this now.
Yes.
And Epic's doing a good job of it with Fortnite. I agree. I'm not a big Fortnite fan, but even I can see that that's kind of become the everyman's game. And by that, I mean, it encompasses every game type just about now. Like, if you jump into that game, there's a game type in there that you like now, just about. Yes. And Andy's like, Geek just described why I haven't bought a new system since the PS2. Truly describes how I feel about the industry as it is right now. And you're not, and honestly, a lot of that is the older generation that has seen enough of this that we see it as a problem now. If you look at the younger generation, it's all new. So they don't see it as much. Or how they're thinking about it is, this is all disposable content. I don't really care if this is around later. It doesn't really matter to me because I'm not attached to anything, right? I don't have nostalgia for anything. It's not ingrained. And when you're younger, that makes total sense. Most younger people don't really have a whole lot of nostalgia because they've not lived long enough to be nostalgic about anything, right? It's only as you get older that you really start to get nostalgic about things from your past, right? Because you have to have lived a while to have nostalgia. It's just nostalgia.
Nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
It is. It's a hell of a drug. And honestly, and that's where it's gotten kind of weird because you got all these like mobile games and stuff like that that have started taking over in the console industry. You know, like you've got your Genshin Impact, your Henkai Railroad or whatever it is. It's the other one that's like Genshin Impact. The art style's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. But it's that kind of like timed grind kind of game, right? Mm-hmm. And it was that kind of gating process that can kind of lead a lot of people that aren't really into that, which it'll keep a lot of people for a little while and they'll get some money out of it and they'll have some whales that'll really push into it, but then you'll see a lot of people taper off. But they don't need everybody. They just need the people that are spending 2, 3, 4, 10 grand. And yeah, there are people dropping that kind of money in there and they make money hand over fist that way. In our opinion, what was the actual pinnacle of gaming? For me, I think it's the 90s. And the reason I say that is because the industry was still figuring itself out, and you had all sorts of just weird, bonkers ideas hitting the wall all the time, right? And you had so many people in the market that it was impossible not to try to push things and to stand out more. Otherwise, it didn't work. Like you just fell on your face and you died, right? Because you had the CDI, right. You had the Neo Geo, you had the Super NES, you had the Genesis, you had the Saturn, you had the PlayStation 1, you had the TurboGrafx. All these are running at the same time. The 3DO. It was just a weird time, right? And so you got games that come out like Boogerman.
And they were all in the price gamut was so insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, for me, that's probably just because of the innovation that's going on there. There were two big eras that I feel like were like big pushes. Like the NES era was one of them because you really started to kind of make console games differ from the arcade games and they really started becoming their own thing. In the 90s is where the market started discovering itself. For the most part, it started going from a niche thing to a more everybody plays kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so you had all this discovery of what works, what doesn't work, what ideas can we throw out there, what this would be funny, let's do this. So you had your Earthwind Jims, you had your Boogerman, you had your Sonic, you know, and you had all those things come in. You had Jack and Dexter come out, you had Spyro, you had Metal Gear Solid start out around this time and everything like that. All these, half of these like regular titles that you see now started then.
I would agree with that.
That was Pong. I reference Pong so much on my channel, dude. I laugh, but it's in like half my videos. I'm not even gonna lie, because of all the time. Yeah, see, Indy says the same thing. The 90s, the difference between what was the arcades versus home consoles got so blurred that it was almost indistinguishable, and then the consoles started becoming more powerful than even the arcades and started really pushing the medium in new directions with new experiences, longer, deeper experiences. Your Final Fantasy 7s, your Final Fantasy 2 on SNES 3, stuff like that, telling these grand stories over like 30, 40 hours, right? For like a pittance for what you would pay in the arcade. Blast processing was the pinnacle. Not to mention some way out there games taking risks like Dear Esther. Yeah. And I'd say there's been kind of a resurgence of that with the indie game scene to an extent. I feel like they've kind of got a little stagnant lately, but the indie gaming scene that started doing around the 2000s, 2010s, really started trying to push the envelope again. And AAA started taking notice and grabbing a lot of those ideas and trying to incorporate them into their AAA titles. But the indie game scene is the next thing that I think is what's going to push things if things are going to get pushed. And they've already done some of it because there's been some pretty creative stuff. And if you go back and you look, even if you look at some of the small development teams that are doing things on the older consoles, like you'll see games like Flea, which sounds silly, but it's like an 8-bit game for the NES where you play a flea and you can't stop jumping. The entire mechanic is to navigate the way on with a character that can't not jump and to finish the game. That's a very simple idea. But when you take the ability to jump away from the player and you make them always have to do it and have to learn around that mechanic, you get something kind of special. Right? And it's doing something in a simple way, but doing it new. That can make a big difference when people pay attention to it. And that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to see more of. That's the kind of stuff I miss from the 90s.
But you're not going to get any of that until... Kenneth is up there berating JDA for being up in YouTube. But I don't see. So here's the problem, and we probably have to wrap up because it's 12:46 here.
I know. I gotta spend some time on the sofa, and I gotta do a couple things before I pass out tonight.
You're not gonna see that until people stop buying the things that are that chasing shiny object, and
Yes.
and that's where it gets down to it is that people are spending the money on the shiny object, and they're not spending the money on those experiences that you and I used to spend, and Retsnom and Indy and JDA and Fused and Pudge and all of us old guys, I guess. Those are the games we spent our money on are not the games that the 18 to 22 is spending their money on. And until that changes, companies aren't going to listen to what we want. They're going to listen to what those kids are playing because that's where the cash is. And yes, might you get some indie games that come into Game Pass or you can buy for $9.99 or something like that? You know,
that will break the internet, Mario.
Yes. Are we ever going to see that as the mainstream again? Unfortunately not. And I don't think it's going to happen until people's spending habits change.
But they're now pushing free-to-play games with pay-to-play DLC. Yeah. If the game is free, you are the product. And you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And that's where the industry has gone from making a product that consumers want to making the consumers the product. And I think that's part of the problem. It's part of the juxtaposition that at least gamers of a certain age are starting to have that we see with the current system. And he's like, what? I'm not an old guys. You play old guy games. You're an honorary old guy.
That's right.
You got lumped in with those fogies who met Link in the gold cart. That's right. You tell him, Show. If you know what a Game Boy is, you're old.
Who played Frogger on Intellivision?
Television. Not me. I never had an Intellivision.
Hold on. Hey, I want to show you something before we roll out because I think you'll like this.
See, Porpoise played it on Atari. He's in the club.
So, the show is talking about this version of Frogger on the Intellivision. But I think you would love to see this. My Pitfall on the Intellivision. I still have a sizable Intellivision collection. I wish I had a good Intellivision that ran on an HD TV that I could play this stuff on.
You need to talk to Papa Pete because they make those modified that have an HDMI out. He knows a guy.
I do need to talk to him.
He's got one that's modified for HDMI. That's how he plays his. So yeah, you need to reach out to Papa Pete.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to start to wrap this one up, guys.
Yes.
So, any last thoughts from the chat or what's a mall? Now he's just being a jerk. I love it. I love the chat. You guys are great.
They are. This is the community right here.
So yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. All I can say is if you guys see something that's doing something unique or something fun, get the word out on that game, get the word out on that developer, support those kinds of products. Get your kids to playing those kind of products and introduce them to some of the stuff that you kind of grew up with so they get an idea of where things came from. There's no harm in at least letting them try some of these things, particularly when they're younger. And then if they want to go through and they want to play the Fortnites or whatever, let them play that too. Don't determine what they play, but expand their experiences a little bit, because I think it'll make for a better market moving forward if they understand where a lot of these things kind of came from, what was out there before, what they have now, and they'll probably start to realize that a lot of this stuff does feel the same, and maybe that's not necessarily where it needs to be. And especially introducing to things with quirky hardware. Throw a DS or a 3DS at them. Let them mess around with a Wii or a Kinect. You know, let them get those experiences, because those are experiences that are worth having. Even if you don't love them, they're worth trying. Heck, throw a VR headset on them. Those are fun too. And there's some neat stuff going on there too from time to time. They get wrapped up in their own little bubble, but there's some good stuff going on there.
Agreed.
I'm going to work. See you later, Andy. Have a good one, man. All right. So unless you got any other last words, Mike, or if you want to talk about what's going on tomorrow on your channel, I know you got Purpose coming on on your
Brother
channel.
Kenneth will be with us.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
have a good time tomorrow night talking to Brother Kenneth about his gaming history, and we'll probably go a little bit more into all this because this is the topic of really the quarter right now is the direction everybody's going, and so I'm curious as to his thoughts on that. And so we have that, and then on Wednesday Peter will be streaming. He has his he might be doing some more Helldivers 2. So
I do want to pick up
Live.
that game, and I need to find a night to play with people in there, because I saw some stuff on that the other day, and I'm like, this looks like
he's got it on PC. So when you're ready, hit up Peter.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna grab it on PC because
So
it looks like a lot of fun.
So it sounds like I'm on Thursday going to be doing Dark Forces, and then I don't know yet what we're doing.
I cannot wait.
I know. And
I'm
then,
so looking forward to revisiting that game.
Me too. And then Friday, I'm not sure what we're doing Friday yet. I have no idea what our Friday night with Peter and Mike's going to be. It's not going to be Final Fantasy, that's for sure. We'll figure out what we're doing.
One of the things I'm going to start trying to do, I know my wife is into it, and I know she would like to do 7 Days to Die. But I wouldn't mind getting like a full group in, because the Grounded can do
talk to Shanity.
So 4 people in Grounded would be a lot of fun.
I would play Grounded. I absolutely play Grounded. I would absolutely.
Yeah, because I've been doing Grounded solo, and I've done it a little bit with Nicole, and it's fun both ways. It takes a little bit of time to do stuff, but the more people you have in there grabbing resources and stuff like that, the faster it's all going to go. So long as you have somebody who knows what you need to grab and where it is, kind of point people in a direction, then you can get stuff together and kind of move pretty quick through a lot of that stuff. And that would be a fun experience to have a bunch of people in on. And I've been trying to get her hooked up with Chan for 7 days, because she needs a buddy to play 7 days with. And I've tried it a couple of times, and I struggle with the early game on it, and just 7 days in general in a lot of ways. So it's not always been my forte. I try to get into it a little bit more because I know she likes it. But I'm much more comfortable with stuff like Grounded than I am 7 days overall.
Yeah, and I'm not that into those games. I'm really not. But Grounded, I would play. I would do a Grounded night with you guys.
Yeah, I think that would be fun to get 3 or 4 people in on. Helldivers is another one I wouldn't mind getting a group together to play, and there's just kind of doing some stuff. Whether we're streaming it, whether we're not, so long as people are playing it and having a good time, then that's kind of what's important. But the only thing I have coming up on my channel this week is I have another one of the rare game experiences. This week I'm going to be talking about a Famicom game. I'm going to move away from arcade into the Famicom. I did find some very, very, very bizarre arcade ones. Um, one of which I don't know if I want to show on the channel just because it's kind of too weird. And I never thought I would say that. But one I don't know. It might be one that I have to do short on because I have no idea how I'd make this a long-term video because it's just such a weird concept. It's such a simple gameplay, and I'm like, I don't even know how to talk about this. uh, say something inflammatory. Pulled all nighter. Nobody here's old. So yeah, that'll be coming out, and then I'm debating on which long form video I want to do next. There's the deep thoughts thing, and then I have one I'm thinking about doing on Adventures of Lolo, and then there's a couple other consoles that have come up. I love Adventure of Lolo. I think it's a great series.
That's a good series. I've played a couple of them. They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun puzzle games, and they're challenging puzzle games too. So there's some stuff like that I'm kind of debating on what I'm going to do as far as the next long video goes. But, you know, the one I've got now is running pretty good. It's kind of out there doing its thing, and I'm surprised as hell at how it's doing its thing. It's been bizarre. It may have ended tonight because we did the stream. So the stream's, it's still pulling in some numbers. So we'll see. I don't know. It may be about to taper off and wander off into the sunset, which it was due to do anyway. It's been running hot and heavy for a couple days. So we'll see. But that's been a good video, and I'm looking forward to getting some more new stuff out there. That's really what I'm trying to do, is look forward and get more stuff out. Yeah, I was surprised the first one was challenging. Dude, that game looks all... It's like a lot of those games from the era, man. It looks all sweet and fuzzy on the surface, and then you start digging into it, and it'll bite you. Those old games don't pull punches, man. They will bite you. Absolutely. But we're going to call it a night. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and spending time with us. We're going to be doing this again. Like I said, I'm going to try to take some more breaks from editing to spend some time to hang out, even if it's just a short hour, 2 hours here and there, and kind of do some more stuff like that here and there. So hopefully that'll be coming in the near future, so long if I can get my schedule set up and make sure I can adhere to it. That's the big challenge there. So thank you guys again. Thank you all for coming by. It's been an absolute blast having you all here. We always love it when you guys come by and hang out. And we look forward to seeing you